All right, it's 6:03 by my clock. I'll call to order the meeting of the Brawley City Council and successor agency to Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency. This is our regular meeting agenda for Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. We're zooming into this meeting. There are some people present in council chambers. Let's do the roll call. Alma,
The minutes will reflect all council members present.
Okay. We're going to skip the invocation and pledge of allegiance because we're doing this meeting by Zoom, and we'll move to item 1 on the agenda, the approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda as written.
So moved. This is Sam.
Second, Donnie.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Should we
Any
do,
opposed? All right.
should we do a roll call on the vote, Mr. Mayor?
Sam made the motion, Donnie seconded, and unanimous approval. Item 2 on the agenda is public appearances and comments. Not to exceed 4 minutes. This is the time for the public to address the council on any item not appearing on the agenda that's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. Are there anyone present in the council chambers there to make a public comment that doesn't have to do with something else on the agenda? No. Okay, let's see. Did receive a written comment. I will read that into the record here. Pardon me. Okay, this is from Emmanuel Martinez from the Imperial Irrigation District Government Affairs. He says, I'm reaching out on behalf of the IID Board of Directors to make you keenly aware of the situation IID and its customers are currently faced with due to the pandemic, and to request your assistance in reaching out to your constituents to ensure they receive the assistance they need so they do not fall behind on their IID bill. To help customers, at the onset of the pandemic, the IID Board adopted a shut-off moratorium. It also infused an additional $2 million into its energy assistance programs to help during the pandemic. IID also implemented flexible payment plans for customers, all to make sure they're not worse off at the end of the pandemic because customers will still owe unpaid balances. We've also partnered with agencies and programs that are assisting customers with utility payments, such as Campesinos Unidos, who operate the Low-Income Housing Energy Assistance Program, and the County of Imperial, who has the Coronavirus Relief Fund. Despite the efforts, as of November 30th, there were over 42,000 residential accounts and over 2,000 commercial delinquent accounts. This represents 12.3 million in delinquent accounts. As of the same date, over 9,000 accounts would be ready for disconnection absent the shut-off moratorium. Given the need to help people during this time and also the need to keep the IID operational to deliver energy, we wanted to make sure you are aware of the situation and help us spread that word of the available program. Members of the public impacted by COVID are encouraged to call IID and request assistance and enroll in a flexible payment program. You can also visit www.iid.com to get additional details on the aforementioned. Thank you for the opportunity to submit these public comments. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Sincerely, Emmanuel Martinez, Government Affairs Specialist, IID. So it sounds like he's asking all of us as council and anyone watching the meeting to spread the word that there is assistance for people that are behind on their utility bills. And it sounds like without people applying for that program, that money's not getting sent to IID to cover those delinquent bills. So they need that as much as the people that are behind. So we do ask you to urge any friends or family members that you know in the community to apply for that program if need be. All right, there are no further public comments, Tyler?
No, sir.
No, okay.
No.
Tyler, did you have something? You're muted. Okay, oh, there you go.
Okay, there's an echo if I don't have my computer muted, so I'm trying to control that. In regards to that comment with the IID, we have, and we'll continue to post on the hub and on the Instagram, on our City of Brawley Instagram account, and also on the hub of Brawley. We've put the message out there as well.
Okay, is that, what, has there been an insert in our utility bill yet that you know of?
No, our bills had already went out when that was,
Okay.
when that was circulated.
Gotcha. That might be something we consider for the next utility bill. Mr. Castro, did you have something?
Mr. Mayor, you beat me to it. That was my only question.
Okay, all right, so moving on to item 3, consent agenda. Items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public may request consent items be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is George. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
And second, Donnie.
Okay, moved by Councilman Nava, seconded by Councilman Wharton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Consent agenda is approved.
That's good.
All right, we will move on to item 4. This is a public hearing. We are to conduct a public hearing for a conditional use permit for medical services and substance abuse treatment counseling center at 525 Main Street here in Brawley. Property is legally described as lots 13 and 14, block 71, townsite of Brawley, city of Brawley, county of Imperial, state of California. Assessor's parcel number 047-342-014. This will be presented by our Director of Development Services, Gordon Gaist. The backup materials on pages 40 through 53. Gordon, I guess if you have any comments that you want to make ahead of time, you can do that. Otherwise,
Yeah, no, just an introduction to the item, that this is a conditional use permit for a medical clinic downtown. The difference in our downtown specific plan between a doctor's office and medical clinic is basically the volume of patients. Medical clinics have a larger amount of patients that are there at one time. This particular project is proposing to have group therapy and such at the location. As a very brief history, I'm sure you're probably all aware of it, but you can ask me any questions at any time. When this went to DRC, we received a lot of comments, and we tried to tailor the conditions to those comments. Most of the comments dealt with assuming this was a methadone clinic, which it's not. They will not be prescribing or giving medications at the site. At Planning Commission, we got significantly less comments because a lot of the people, like I said, that was their biggest concern, but we still had comments about the location being at the heart of downtown. So the Planning Commission, with their option of either approving the project with those conditions or even adding additional conditions, was still denied. So the applicant appealed to the city council, and I believe she's on and available to give a presentation. And again, if you have any questions for me at this time or after the public hearing, I'm here. So just let me know.
okay, thank you, Gordon. Before we move into the public hearing, I want to hand it over to the city attorney, Bill Smurden, to lay out his view of the legality of it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're on for public hearing. The procedure will be that the mayor will open the public hearing. You'll take comments from whoever cares to make comments. When everyone has made their comments, said their piece, then the mayor will close the public hearing. Council will deliberate decide what to do, whether to deny or approve the conditional use permit, but your decision's not final. What you need to do is you make a motion to approve, deny, whatever, or approve with additional conditions, however you'd like to do it. And that in that motion, you direct the city attorney to prepare a resolution with your written findings, justifying your decision, that will be considered and adopted at your next meeting. Written findings are required, and the only practical way to do it is to do it in this manner, because we're certainly not going to take the time to draft up written findings during your council meeting. So are there any questions about that?
This is George. Bill, thank you for that clarification. Just a question with respect to the written findings. It's just in the event the application is denied. Am I correct in that? Or
no, because it can be. It's possible to challenge an approval in court as well. And if we fail to adopt written findings, that's grounds to set aside an approval.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. There are no other questions for Bill. We will open the public hearing at this time. Are there any comments from the public, from anyone in council chambers, for or against the CUP that's in front of us tonight?
Yes, there are multiple people in the audience that wish to comment.
Okay. As with any public comment, these will be limited to 4 minutes each. So I ask that anyone that's going to make a comment would be mindful of the time, and also if they're going to be similar comments, that you would keep those short. So please state your name for the record.
Is the hearing open? Is the hearing open, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'm opening the public hearing now.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ramiro Urias, and tonight I am here representing the Brawley Chamber of Commerce on behalf of our CEO, Katie Luna. She was able to attend tonight and sends her regards. Mayor Hamby and council members, on behalf of the Brawley Chamber of Commerce, I appreciate the time allowed for the public hearing tonight. I want to reiterate a sentiment that has been echoed time and again since the start of this public process. We believe the services are needed in Brawley, and we welcome these services. We know Dr. Hoyt provides quality counseling to her clients and appreciate the dedication she has to our community members. However, we oppose a CUP that will allow the practice to expand into a retail location. We have offered alternative available locations to Dr. Hoyt via phone dialogue and have offered our resources to help her find a viable tenant for the building she has purchased. If there is one resounding message to take away from our opposition, it is that we firmly believe it is the right location. It is the right idea in the wrong location. In the previous meeting, city staff has stressed the point that we need to fill empty buildings at any cost, and that an occupied building is better than a vacant building. This sentiment does not align with the best practices for the downtown revitalization. In the Brawley Downtown Specific Plan, the land use element section clearly defines policy 2.2.3, which states, where mixed uses are permitted, such in the downtown overlay district, ensure compatible integration with adjacent uses to minimize potential conflicts. Compatibility with existing neighborhoods is important and should be an important consideration. We hope that the City Council will be committed to the vision provided by the community, which is reflected on page 3-1 of the Brawley Downtown Specific Plan. The Brawley Chamber of Commerce knows that the downtown is a civic and cultural heart of Brawley. We are committed to working with a new community and economic development specialists to see progress on revitalization efforts. Thank you again for your time, and I trust the City Council to objectively review all aspects of this expansion prior to making a decision. This concludes our CEO, Katie Luna's remarks. Any questions regarding the statement she has prepared tonight can be addressed to her via phone or email. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramiro. Anyone else?
If I can get additional time, at least up to additional 2 minutes at the request of the council. I wasn't aware of the 4 minutes. It wasn't stated on the agenda. There would be a 4-minute time limit.
Okay.
So I can get into the data. Gil Rebler, Brawley resident. I can get into the data on the rise of drug use and addiction into this pandemic. I can get into all the data, facts, numbers. I can get into the data on rise in drug abuse and addiction due to this pandemic, as families suffer with the harsh realities of a virus that has brought with the illness, unemployment, isolation, the absence of community and family gatherings, and death. When compared to last year in our state, overdose deaths have increased 18% in March, 29% in April, and 42% in May. Those are the recent data that I compiled, but I think it's safe to assume as we ventured it farther into this pandemic that percentage has increased, and that's just in our state alone. I can also get into the data on the decline of department stores and big box retail stores in America, a decline that was happening before COVID has only accelerated in the past several months. Since 2018, over 20% of all department stores have closed or will close by the end of 2020. Retail store, big box stores weren't making a comeback. On the contrary, they're vanishing. There's a reason why that building was empty and continues to still be empty. And as Mr. Goyle stated in the Planning Commission, shopping habits have changed because of COVID. I can also get in the data how many times police were called on the current location of the treatment center, which is 0. That's where I kind of trip at 0 times. More. I think police were called more to when Assange's was open late at night. And no one was ever asking for that to be closed, despite the nuisances and the late night antics that happened there. But I have to be honest, I was really disappointed in the last meeting, not just for the opposition. I understand the fears, although they may be unsubstantiated, not backed by any evidence, but they're valid. Fears are valid. I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's fears, but kind of the last meeting in this, we've kind of turned this into a big circus, a whole big drama, really pitting us against them and rallying people and whatnot. I kind of have to wonder, who's them? Are we fighting against Dr. Hoyt? Or are we fighting against those that need help? Because if it is us versus them, if it is us versus Dr. Hoyt, it's unfortunate that we've made her in somewhat of an opposition, an enemy, when she's helping those that really no one else in the community has been helping, and for the last 4 years going unnoticed. And because of all this rallying and this whole drama and circus, we really made this big old thing. It's only going to stop any other sort of individuals like Dr. Hoyt from coming into town and offering help. They're going to see all this. Why bother? Why go through all that when our services are clearly not wanted in town? And you could say here, not there, but there, but either way, it's not wanted. And it's also unfortunate because of this, we've tainted the great work by Dr. Hoyt. 4 years going unnoticed, providing help to people within our community. And because of all this, no matter where she chooses to go moving forward, whether in the community or not, this whole thing has really tainted her work. And I'm also disappointed to see the attacks on Dr. Hoyt, someone who doesn't need to be here nor dealing with all this, someone who's been helping individuals for the past 4 years. I saw her accused on Facebook of putting profits over community. And on the contrary, she is putting profits into our community. Show me someone who else is willing to buy a building, refurbish it, and provide a community resource for our community residents. Maybe there's a big line that I don't know of. But also seeing comments of word of mouth of those in opposition from the same people that I know, and they know that have families and friends suffering with addiction. Some of the same people who reached out to my family, some who even at one time or another reached out personally to me on what helped me. And to see them now deny those who may not have the things that are available to them, to see them want to deny help to those who need it, also just really kind of hurt and disappointed me. So someone asked me too, what helped me, right? So what helped you? And two things. And let's see, treatment for addiction isn't a one size fits all. If there was we wouldn't be here. It is different for everybody. Everyone gets sober and productive different ways. But I think there's two things that helped me that I think are common. And that was to be two privileges that I had the advantage of having, and that was money and family. Money because my family was able to afford to get me help, and an extremely forgiving family that supported me. Now our city is a poor city. There's a lot of poverty, and that's something we cannot pretend to be blind to. Whereas many families in our and not only that, we're poor, disadvantaged. There is socioeconomic divides in our city, east and west, and many families in our community, especially after COVID, are going to still continue to be in poverty, maybe even more so because of COVID. And so those who don't have money to get help for themselves, and they won't be able to get help for those for their loved ones who cannot afford. But going back to the money and family, is Dr. Hoyt's providing a grant funded program for those who may not have the funds to get help. And also with group counseling, it provides connections and networks. Where I had a family who was very forgiving, many of those suffering with addiction may be abandoned by their families, or also may be who are abandoned by their families, made decisions that have made them isolated. And not only that, many who also have suffered through the cycle of addiction within their families. We see it often, parents with the drug addiction, children with the drug addiction. It's a vicious cycle. And so I guess what Dr. Hoyt's program provides, is an opportunity for help for those without the funds, and for those to build that connection to help fill the void of those who may not have family or support. Now, so you denying the CUP tonight doesn't hurt me. It hurts the families it hurts those who don't have family and who may not have money and funds for help. It hurts those who are poor, abandoned, and wanting to change their lives. And let's be real, it hurts more. Like I said, those train tracks really show a socioeconomic divide in our family. It hurts more on the east side than the west. I don't know how to put it more bluntly than that. Someone asked me the other day, would you let your daughter walk through downtown Brawley? I was like, yeah. And she does already. Her and my partner, Holly, go thrift shopping every week. And you know what they don't see? They don't see all the drug users that I feel like we're trying to paint. They also don't see the planning commission. So, and before you get into that, I'm sure, I think it's safe to assume Eugene Bambera, Kevin Hutchinson, and Jake don't go thrifting on the weekends. So, but I think we also have to look into the future of Brawley. You keep saying like downtown's this gateway. It's not. The way this city was designed in the past few decades, the gateway starts in Westmoreland at Love's and goes through the bypass and ends at Pilot. And the other gateway is right there in Walmart. There's no more traffic going through downtown. Like, I think we're holding on to this old idea that no longer exists. So people need help. And each day that goes by where this gets delayed or denied, then that's another day of suffering for those dealing with addiction. You deny it tonight, just kicking the can down the road. And if it doesn't get approved tonight, it probably won't get approved at all. You talk about different locations. Well, look at the circus here. I think the uproar is going to be if you try to move it going to west side, and if you try to, what does that leave? East side. And if it's not good enough for downtown west side, it shouldn't be good enough for the east side either. I feel like you're going to kick the can down the road, and every day this gets denied and prolonged, more and more people go through the downward spiral of addiction. So I know there are those that are listening, and I heard it last meeting, like the motion was taken, I heard like, yes, like celebratory. There's nothing to celebrate. You guys can vote and approve it. There's nothing to celebrate. However you vote, there's nothing to celebrate. This item has really exposed a dark part, not just in Brawley, but an entire valley of addiction. And I still think there's not enough being done. So I propose grant her a 1-year CUP with a 6-month review. Give her a chance. Here's a woman who's helping those from within our community get a second chance at life. And the very least you can do is give her one chance. And you can make the argument that these past 4 years that she's been in business have been her one chance. And she's proven to run a safe and comprehensive program that has truly benefited our community on a much deeper level than any of us can imagine. Give her a chance, a 1 year with 6-month review increments, maybe even quarterly reviews. But give her a chance to at least show what she can do and help our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. Anyone else from the public in the chamber?
Reyes. Eric Reyes, 1128 Court. You've been at this for months, so I'm sure you've heard all the ins and outs. I don't think anything any of us really say today is going to make the ultimate difference in your vote. and I trust that you have done your due diligence. I know all of you as persons that will do that and have had opinions given for and against, I'm sure. The thing is, we all have that right to opinion, whether we agree with it or not. That's the American way. And that's why we're here. And that's why you're going to decide. And if you don't, and if you approve, and those who don't like that, they're gonna let you know. And if you disapprove, those who were for it are also gonna let you know. That's what you're elected to a city council for. It's not an easy job. Like I said, it was very difficult for me to come here, and it still is difficult because I'm been advocating now for close to 30 years. I can say 30 years I've been an activist for access to resources, and these type of issues come up many times. But there's also a thing called smart growth, and whether we're fools for believing that city council can be redone again in an image that we believe. I'd rather be that fool. I'd rather allow an opportunity for our downtown than killing it right now. And you talk about other people talking about saying they're not going to come to Brawley. Well, obviously, we're not looking for big boxes downtown. It's niche. It's a whole different type of economic look that we're looking at, investment that we're looking for. We're not looking for big boxes downtown. It's ludicrous. So as we move forward, I hope you have taken into account everything that everyone's talking about. And I think number one is civic pride in the downtown area, the whole civic area. It's not just downtown specific. You got I was just walking today in my morning walk, and they're redoing the theater. I saw some people working there again today. That'd be fantastic. I used to pay with the bottle caps to go into the movies there, if you remember those days. I'm older than most of you, so you might not. But it'd be fantastic to see that rebirth of that theater. But I tell you, that plaza, I go down there. We got Mr. Cesar Guzman is helping seniors and people who want to become citizens. They're there every single day. I go and support and help them when I can. We have a lot of senior citizens that go there. And then we have, obviously, our kids that go from junior high and high school and other areas through there. Besides the post office, civic activities. Well, after the pandemic, it'll happen again. And it's not so much that we are opposed, and we've said this many times, all of us, where none of us are opposed to the clinic. Its services, they're much needed. We've all been impacted by drug use in one way or another, whether we did it ourselves personally or not. And it's horrible. And you see downtown, and we have a vision for it. The community has a vision for it. So today's vote will tell us what vision you as council elected members have for downtown as well. Do you believe in that vision one day coming to fruition? And a lot of what happens today will determine that. And if you, and there, no one is demonizing Ms. Hoyt. She has done an excellent job with her one-on-one clinic, which she has downtown for 4 years. They have one patient at a time. They've done an excellent job, and it's a fantastic service. We applaud her for that. The expansion of it, fear is fear, right? Because we have been experienced, and we do know what people who are going through drug therapies are capable of. Not that they're going to do it, but it's always an if, right? And you can say, well, a guy could be driving a car and fall asleep and hit someone else. Yes, true. But an addiction is an addiction. I mean, it's a disease, right? I mean, it's notated in science and so on. So it's a little more likely. So I hope you take into consideration everyone's views, opinions, and beliefs. And I hope you make the right decision for Brawley. And it could be that bringing that clinic is the right decision. If that's and no one will argue with it, that it isn't your belief that it's the right decision. But for many of us who believe in the civic pride, the civic revitalization of downtown, and the opportunity to create something again, which is many of our dreams, it will be the wrong decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. Anyone else in chambers?
Yes, we do.
Good evening. My name is Isabel Solis, and I live on 1128 Elm Court. I've been an educator in Brawley for 19 years, and I'm here to speak about the children who are not participating in these meetings, the children who have to walk in that main street, the children who one day could maybe go back to school and maybe participate in pep rallies in our main street, because that's what our main street was being used for. And so I'm asking you to think of the possibilities of what that main street can be. Yes, our drug use has reached very big heights. I can tell you that in these 19 years here as a teacher, I see a lot of grandmas and grandpas taking care of their grandkids. Why? Because those parents have gone to use substance abuse and they are hooked. The last thing a child needs is to pass that facility. They already know about the dangers of that drug and all the mishaps that have gone because of it. Let our students be able to walk in areas that are free from that. I urge you, it's not going to be the students who live at Ridge Park or who live at Parkside, but it's going to be the students who have to pass through that area. And we all know who those students are. So I ask you to be a voice for those students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Solis.
That is all the public comments in the chambers.
Okay.
I
Now
would
I'll
like-
ask, yeah, I was going to ask Dr. Hoyt if you would say something.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I just wanted to start by clarifying two things that were stated that were inaccurate. The first is which we have been providing groups for the last 4 years at my facility at 537 Main Street, not just individual counseling. And so that's false. The other thing is we do not have a free program. I'm a federal contractor. I currently treat the federal felons that are residing at the halfway house. I would hope to be able to take Medi-Cal with the assistance of the county, but at this time I don't have a free program. I would love to think that we would get there someday, but it's inaccurate to say that at this time. Okay. I wanted to start out by thanking the distinguished city council members for hearing my appeal. Valley Psychological Center has provided substance abuse and mental health treatment for the last approximate 4 years at 537 Main Street. The Chamber of Commerce noted that we had an inquiry regarding what exists beyond our privacy class. And in order to answer that, I had submitted some photographs of our building, which I'm trying to share with you now. I'm not able to get them. Maybe I can show them at the end. Prior to my application for a conditional use permit, I had never had contact with the Chamber of Commerce. Despite running a business for over 4 years at 537 Main Street, they never reached out to me to ask how they could support my business. The Chamber of Commerce never approached me regarding a citizen's complaint, never contacted me about neighboring businesses' complaints, and never asked me to consider moving my business in order to support the development plan. Once I filed a conditional use permit, the Chamber of Commerce again did not reach out to me. Instead, they chose to create and place a flyer on both social media and local news, which indicated that I was attempting to open a methadone clinic, which is not only inaccurate, it is illegal. On October 1st, 2020, the conditional use permit hearing was held and attended by the Chief of Police and the Fire Chief, among others. The vote was 5-0 in favor of my conditional use permit. Please note that both the Fire Chief and the Chief of Police would have staff that would have to respond to my address should we have any problems, yet they voted in favor of the conditional use permit. In the more than 4 years that we have operated at 537 Main Street, we have never had a citizen's complaint. We've never had a business complaint. We never had a law enforcement involvement or the need of the fire department. The Chamber of Commerce is asserting that I'm impeding a decade-old development plan for the city of Brawley on a block on which more than 30% of the buildings are vacant, and I have run a successful business for more than 4 years. They assert that those businesses that do exist would be negatively impacted. Students might come in contact with people seeking help for addiction, or that loitering may occur, again, based on zero historical evidence. Please note my business is already in operation with none of these concerns. There's a halfway house less than 0.2 of a mile from Main Street at my current and new space, which houses known criminals, and yet we remain the concern. Concerns about loitering have been expressed. Again, this has not been a problem for the last 4 years, and we will continue to prevent loitering. The final concern expressed by the Chamber of Commerce was regarding the number of clients being served. We are happy to limit the number of clients we serve and will accept any condition you would like to place on the number of clients permitted to be served on any given day or at any given time. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the Chamber of Commerce continues to assert that if my business were to be able to move, this move would somehow harm local businesses and the citizens of Brawley rather than help them. We are asking to move our services less than 80 feet west on the same block, on the same side of the street, and to continue to peacefully provide services as we have for more than 4 years. Conditional use permits are by definition conditional. You have the power to add any condition you feel is necessary for us to continue to move forward, and the conditional use permit can be withdrawn from us at any time. Let's work together to continue to help the citizens of Brawley rather than stop the progress of a business that already exists and is thriving. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hoyt. Is there any other city staff that would like to make a comment as part of the public hearing? No. Okay. Are there any council members who would like to ask questions as part of the public hearing, or do you want to hold your questions until after the public hearing is closed?
Mr. Mayor, I believe both staff as well as council, I believe we can discuss and deliberate after the fact.
Okay. All right. Well, then at this time, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and move forward with deliberations between council members and the applicant. Are there any council members who wish to ask a question or make any comments on the matter at hand?
This is Councilmember Nava. It's more of a question directed at Dr. Hoyt. I believe she's still on. Dr. Hoyt, if you can just pop back in, I'd appreciate that very much.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dr. Hoyt. I appreciate your time. Listen, George Nava, council member here with the city of Brawley. And I know that this item has gone before the review committee. It's also gone before the planning commission. With respect to some of the concerns that, and some of them were expressed here today by the members of the public, with respect to some of the concerns, and you brought it up in some of the comments that you made, such as loitering and maybe the environment that would be introduced with larger groups. What would you do to mitigate those concerns? And even if I'm not bringing them up now, but some of the other concerns that were brought up along the way, what would you do to mitigate the concerns that the public had and maybe that were brought up in other meetings?
Sure. Relative to the loitering specifically, we do not allow our clients to present more than 5 minutes prior to their appointment time, and we escort them to the door when they leave. We would discourage them, obviously, from being in front of the building, and very frankly, it's never been a problem. Our clients don't really want to be identified at a substance abuse clinic any more than people want them to be identified there. We cannot force them to leave, obviously, but I can't think of what set of circumstances that they would linger, if that makes sense.
Another question with respect to the facility itself. I know we've seen the building in the way it is currently. It has old signage and obviously it's still in the condition that it was when the previous tenant was occupying it. What are your plans for the aesthetics of the building? Do you have a plan in place? Do you have renderings of the work that you're going to be doing? Anything like that?
I do. I had started to work with a developer there to have plans drawn up, just not anticipating this problem with the CUP. And I put all of that on hold because I'm reticent to funnel more money into it if we're not going to be able to do it. But essentially it would be installing offices downstairs with a large waiting area. I would like to ultimately be able to use both the front and the back of the building, the back for an adolescent program with a homework component, which I think would be critical. But that's way far down the line, you know, like 5 years, depending, everything's going really well up front. But I feel like we have such an issue with multi-generational abuse there that we're making a mistake if we're not getting people early. So it's you walk in, there's a waiting area, there's a record station to the left, and then basically it's like a hallway with offices all the way down the side. I can't really afford at this time to develop upstairs or the back. But I would hope that if the business continued to be successful and grew, that we would be able to do that. And again, you know, I'm very happy to come back with any kind of approval I would need for further development. I'm not somebody who is super eager to make a whole lot of change. I just want to keep hoeing my row, if you will, and just continue with our progress. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
I have a question for the doctor. This is Sam Couchman. Doctor, I understand now that you have the business in place that you do individual counseling on most of the people that you see. And my understanding on the new facility is it would be some of that, but also group counseling where you would have large groups of people come in, or I don't know how large they would be, but groups of people come in for the counseling. Is that the case? Is that a difference, or is that the same that you're currently doing?
It's the same. And what we do, Mr. Couchman, is people who come to our program are required to have 60 minutes of individual counseling a week and 90 minutes of group. And so I'm not anticipating large numbers of people being at the facility at any given time, but what I am anticipating is offering groups more frequently. There were already conditions placed on the billing relative to time. So I believe it's currently 8:30 to 6:30 at night because I wanted people to be able to come after work if they needed to. But again, you're allowed to place conditions on how many people I can have there. At any given time now, we have a maximum of 14 to 16 persons. I would like to see it to where we could have 2 groups of 10, and then we would need 2 clinicians, and then we have a full-time receptionist just to manage the traffic through the door. But again, if that was something that the community couldn't tolerate, if they felt that, 22 persons were too much, I would be willing to offer 1 group at a time. And then there would be probably a maximum of 14 people at any given time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another question, Dr. Hoyt. This is Councilmember George Nava again. With respect to the group counseling, where would these, and you mentioned that it would be, it's federal, I believe you said federal, it's a federal contract, and they're coming from the halfway house. Would all of the group sessions come from the halfway house, or are they coming from different parts of the Imperial County?
I'm hoping from different parts of Imperial County, really focused on Brawley, because I think that's where we have the greatest need. And if I'm limited, I will, and people asked me this last time, I will limit it to the people of Brawley. It will be hard for me to turn somebody away who needs it desperately, but I will. But right now we are limited to people coming from the halfway house, or those that are on home confinement but attached to the halfway house, right? So they don't exactly reside there, but they're in the community. But the goal would be to offer it to the broader community, to our Medi-Cal participants, frankly.
And again, this is George now. Just with respect to, and I don't know how your day-to-day business operates, so forgive me for not knowing the details, but with respect to your clientele, how are they arriving? Are they using public transportation? Are they driving vehicles? Are they riding bicycles? How are they are they walking? What is it that they're doing?
I would say the majority are walking. Some are using public transportation and some are driving if they're coming from work. But by and large, the majority are walking.
Thank you.
Dr. Hoyt, good evening. Donnie Wharton here, and thank you for obviously providing the service that you do. And I think that was pretty much echoed with all comments, at least the comments I heard. My question is, you referenced the 4 years, just overall, because maybe I didn't catch it in previous meetings, but just how long have you been providing counseling services, or just really kind of a little bit more on I guess your history in helping these type patients?
Sure. I have worked in community mental health for the last approximate 30 years. I ran a clinic in downtown San Diego with 850 persistently mentally ill for approximately 5 years, where I had full-time psychiatry from UCSD and full-time nursing. I had over 22 clinical interns from local universities here treating clients, and it was extremely intense. We had a day treatment program. In 2009, my mother and I, who she's also a psychologist, began commuting to El Centro, doing workers' compensation work, and then also doing law enforcement and just seeing people in the community. At that point, I began working on the federal contract for the Bureau of Prisons. And approximately 4 years ago, the catchment area for that contract was moved to Brawley. And we moved our clinic from Hank Kuiper's building in El Centro to Tony Ray's building in Brawley. And we've been doing that work with federal felons for the last approximate 10 years. I have 12 federal contracts across the United States where we service over 200 felons a month. That's about it.
Yeah, and just one of the, just I guess at the expense of being repetitive, one of the concerns obviously being, whether it's children or, members of the public coming in contact. Can you just put in perspective that, these may be also, they're really drug abuse and addiction, as well as alcohol and other forms, of substance abuse. Maybe just share some community statistics. There aren't they among us? So it's not being concerned about this, particular one location. I mean, if that's the rationale, shouldn't we be concerned at Vons and Walmart and anywhere else that we might be out in public?
Well, and very frankly, I didn't come prepared with statistics, and I apologize for that. As a statistician, I probably should have. But what I can tell you is we're not importing anybody into the community, and we're not servicing anybody who's not there. When I hear these arguments about, well, they'll be walking through Main Street, they're already walking through Main Street. When I hear they're going to be on public transportation, they're already doing all of that. If you look at your DUI rates, they're massive for Brawley. I can't remember. I had initially started to do a DUI program, and I think it was like 450 people were arrested in 1 year with DUIs in Brawley. And I think there's like this erroneous belief that the drug population is very, very small. I can tell you based on national statistics that there are currently today over 2,000 persons in Brawley that need opioid treatment alone. Over 2,000 just for opioid addiction. And we know that because the national average is 7.8%. But you do not have an opioid provider there. And I'm not asking to be one, but I'm just saying that that's just the tip of the iceberg for what you're facing. And when you look at downtown and you want to know why the businesses aren't thriving and things aren't revitalized, if you've got such a large portion of your population addicted, they're taking from your society, they're not giving back. The nice piece with us is, believe it or not, I have 4 or 5 of my federal felons that at this point have graduated that are from Brawley. They have completed classes at IBC to be drug counselors, and they're chomping at the bit to come in and do peer support and help people get into recovery. I didn't say this publicly, but Embers, are one of our graduates who came forward and supported us, is the head cook there. And so, I mean, we're not bringing anybody to you that's not already there. All we want to do is make your citizens viable for you. And I understand the issue. I'm a single mother of 2 teens. My husband died this year of 28 years, actually in June, the month before I bought this building. And so you bet your bottom dollar, I worry every single day about my own children. And if there was any concern that I felt that I would deplete Brawley further by putting that clinic there, or that I was somehow going to take something from a family or a child, I wouldn't do it. I'm too conscious for that. I firmly believe that we have a massive problem there, and pretending that it doesn't exist or trying to put it in a back alley is not helpful. Particularly, like I said, I'm on a street with 30% of the buildings vacant and, fires and la. I don't mean to make light of it, but the Chamber of Commerce had said to me initially, well, you didn't do your due diligence. You didn't respect the citizens of Brawley, and this is why you're here with the CUP. And I couldn't think that that's more false. It was because I had faith in the citizens of Brawley that they would see that we've been doing this less than 80 feet east of where I want to be for 4 years. In my mind, it only makes logical sense that we would move forward. And so maybe in that respect, I've learned a very tough business lesson, and I will accept that if that's what it is. But we have some serious issues there. They're multi-generational, they're problematic, and we need to do something to help them. And if it's not at my new space, I can accept that. But it's going to happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
Sure.
Councilman Castro, did you have a question? I saw you raise your hand.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Dr. Hoyt. This is Ramon Castro. I just have a couple of questions. If this project isn't approved, the CUP isn't approved, what type of a negative impact would it have on your current business?
My business, no. My personal finances, yes. I'm under contract with the federal government, and I cannot be in breach of contract. So I will continue to provide those services at Tony's building. He's been more than generous with me. He and I get along extremely well. So we will stay there and we will continue to operate there. And then I will rethink things and see if we can't do it somewhere else and just move on.
So and another question is, so that, no negative impacts to that business, but if you were to move over to the next building, would you be creating any new positions? And if so, how many?
I have no idea. I like to believe that we would, given the massive need and the numbers of people on Medi-Cal. If we can collaborate with the county, I think that there would be a lot of work available. I'm reticent to say that though, because I don't want to scare people with bringing in large numbers. I think we have to weigh and balance that. But I can tell you, given the wages in Brawley that I don't pay, I actually pay a decent wage, but I think that we can offer income opportunity for people. I think we can get people in recovery, supporting each other in recovery, making money. And there's plenty of money through Medi-Cal to make it viable. And I mean, I'm a businesswoman. I'm not going to do it for free. But at the same time, it's not the same it would be if I put something up in Palm Springs or frankly anywhere else I am. You know, like I said, I'm across the United States, but my heart's in Brawley. You know, it's been very good to me. It's where I had my first clinic. And I had made a commitment to do something to help if I could, and I intend to stand by that.
Thank you.
Dr. Hoyt, this is George Nava again, Councilmember Nava. Question for you. You know, and I know during the process, it was introduced to the public just on the streets and on social media as a potential site for a methadone clinic, and I think that's been disproven. But you know, just for our sake, can you walk us through the experience of one of your client coming to your facility? What would they go through? You know, what treatment services are offered?
Sure. We do cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's looking at your cognitions and what you tell yourself about your current set of circumstances. And then we look at criminal conduct, because what happens is when people begin to drink and use, their thinking shifts because they have to hustle to get their drugs. So the first thing that would happen was if somebody approached the clinic, we would bring them inside to avoid loitering. We'd also talk to them on the phone, and we would do an initial assessment. We would see, do they need detox? If they do, we would triage them to the county to get detox services. Once they're out of detox, they would come in and attend at least one group a week, probably one, and one individual. And then we would encourage them to attend 12-step groups in the community. We are not currently permitted to provide services on the weekend. Most drug treatment programs offer a family program on the weekend where they have family members come in. We will probably move to doing that Friday afternoons in order to get the support of the family. I will tell you, in Latino communities, you have the best support in the world for addiction. They will enable you into the ground, but you also have the best support in the world for recovery. And if we can get people on board with recovery, we can really turn this around. So that would be it. They would come in, they would get a period. It's usually, 30 to 60 days of sobriety. And then we step down treatment as needed. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council for Dr. Hoyt? I had a few questions, Dr. Hoyt. I think they've mostly been answered by questions that were asked by the other council members. But you mentioned some of your graduates being Brawley residents or tied to Brawley in one way or another. But it is a federal contract. So do you have an idea of what ratio or proportion of your clients are Brawley residents or have family as Brawley residents?
I would say 95% or higher, because they usually release to where they were arrested. The other thing is both of my secretaries and my clinical staff are all from Brawley. And that's, I insist on that no matter where my clinics are, because there's a whole, so much more having been and raised there than I ever will. And so there's just a different relatability. Everybody's I'm the only one that doesn't speak Spanish fluently. So it's very much of the area and for the people. I will say that we have started to get more clients from Yuma and also other areas of the county. And I think that's because there's been such a push to bring people out of prison because of COVID, right? So prior to COVID, it was probably 99%. But since COVID and then pushing people out of prison, they've been putting people in halfway houses differentially more. Like I said, maybe 5%.
Okay. How often are you in Brawley working in the office there?
I am usually there once a week when we're not in the middle of COVID. Right now, I've been doing Zoom therapy for 9 months. So I'm excited to get back, but usually I commute there at least once a week.
And with COVID, are the clients coming in to the office and then sitting in front of a screen for you to do the Zoom therapies, or is everyone having to Zoom in?
Everyone's having to Zoom in. We did that when we could, but it's really gotten bad lately. So my secretary reports to the office in case somebody needs assistance, but all of my clinicians are from home offices on Zoom, and the clients, if they're in quarantine, that's been a really big deal. They've been quarantined. When they release from the institution, they have to quarantine for 2 weeks mandatorily, but they're usually coming off of a 30-day quarantine in the institution. So they're looking at 45 days of quarantine. So we began doing treatment with them while they're still in quarantine on Zoom. And then to the extent that the halfway house is allowing movement, which is again, bureau driven and also Brawley numbers driven, we will see them in the office. But I think it's safe to say that probably, the majority of our services are being done via Zoom since COVID.
Gotcha. You said that group therapies are ongoing. At what level are they at right now, and how does that compare to what you're asking for in the CUP?
Our federal clients are mandated to 1 group a week. So we're holding group approximately 3 times a week. I would like to hold 2 groups a day, 5 days a week. Why? Because if we have shift workers and they can't make it at night, or we have people that leave work, right? Because we want to support people that are back to work. So I'm thinking we would do a morning and an afternoon group. But again, that would be predicated on interest and need. And also, if you choose to have a conditional use permit that doesn't permit it, then we won't do it.
And if the CUP is denied, you wouldn't move into the new location. You would stay in the building that you're in currently.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I would stay in Tony's place until I find another place. And if I can get somebody to fund, I have to think it through, but I've been paying Tony $2,000 a month rent for 4 years, and I have a 10-year contract. So I thought of it as an investment, very frankly. I thought it would allow us to grow social services, develop a bigger program, and for me to stop paying rent and invest in Brawley, literally, beyond, my blood, sweat, tears, and time. And so I don't know. I've talked to Tony. I'm allowed to stay. I can't imagine in the middle of COVID we would move. But I think your broader question is, would our services continue in Brawley for those citizens? And that answer is yes.
Okay. This is a question regarding, looking at the CUP itself, the language there. There are a couple items that seem to be a little ambiguous when it comes to, that condition having to do with not offering medication or, treatment of that kind. Let's see, I think it was item 7. Says applicant and any occupant, tenant, licensee, employee, or contractor operating at the site or using this conditional use permit shall not distribute or otherwise provide any medication, drugs, chemicals, or compounds of any type, syringes, or any item containing THC in any concentration. I just want to clarify that we're not talking about all these items that it mentions are not all in reference to something containing THC, but are separate items. So you won't be providing any medication, you won't be providing any drugs or chemicals or compounds of any type or syringes. And also you will not be offering any item containing THC in any concentration. That's separate. Is that correct?
We will be giving no one there anything beyond what they came in with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think the rest of it just mentions methadone specifically, and the reason for that is because that was a point of contention for the appeal, was that it sounded like it might be a methadone clinic or that might be offered there.
No, and I don't know why the Chamber of Commerce put that flyer on social media and put it on the news saying that we were a methadone clinic. They never contacted me. And once that happened, there was no way I could backtrack it. They just kept hammering on that, even though in every hearing I had this similar dialogue with somebody else. We're not doing any of that. There's no prescription of anything happening at that. We're not giving anything out. There's no marijuana brownies. There's nothing.
Right, and I think that was a misperception, not just on the Chamber's part as far as that particular item, but I'd been contacted by other members of the public that were just as concerned because of the the designation of a medical clinic or a substance abuse treatment facility, I think the perception was that there would be something administered. And since the opioid crisis is upon us, that it would be methadone. So I think it was just a misconception. And, you know, it's unfortunate that that's the word that got out first ahead of your messaging. But I appreciate the clarification on that. This is a question, maybe this would be more pointed toward the city attorney, but as far as a time element goes, I know I've been on the other side of the issue in other organizations that have applied for conditional use permits, and often will have a timing element in the language of the CUP. And I think Dr. Hoyt, you mentioned, and maybe it was Gil Revelar that talked about putting some type of a time constraint on the CUP. I don't think I read anything in it that having to do with, you know, how long that CUP would last and whether it would have to come back for a reissue. But Bill, is there, how difficult is it to add language like that, whether it's a 1 year or a 5 year review and a reissue?
Mr. Mayor, it's just a matter of the majority of the council telling us to do it. And then we will add it to whatever resolution that we bring back to you next time. Probably the way, if you're going to do that, my suggestion would be that we'd have some sort of a thing where it's a review at some point, and if upon a positive review to be renewed probably indefinitely after that.
Okay. I'm not sure what all would be, part of that review, what metrics you would have for, approval of a reissue. Gordon, you have something to say?
Yeah, no, I agree with Bill. This actually was brought up to the Planning Commission as an option of an addition to the conditions, that we can have it reviewed after a certain amount of time. And then, of course, depending on any comments that we got regarding the status of the business, if there were complaints during that period of time, or if there weren't, that then they would establish again a further review on a time frame, depending on how many complaints there were, or if not, just until there were enough complaints to what a CUP can always be brought back for reconsideration if they're not meeting the conditions.
Sure.
So like I said, but because of this is kind of a sticky situation, we recommended that we give them maybe 6 months, a year, from the time that they actually opened, and we can have a public hearing again with either your choice, how you want to write the conditions, with Planning Commission, or now this has gone up to council, maybe all at the council, and give an opportunity for people to comment before a public hearing that we can have to review the conditions of approval that were established if it gets approved.
Okay. And along with that, if there is a time period that's attached as a condition for a review, would you also have to include what the extended period would be after that? So if it were reissued within this first resolution, would we have to say after the review, the conditional use permit is good for the following 5 years, or in perpetuity?
Well, I think Bill could probably answer the question best, but I would say the way we've done it with other conditional use permits that we've had that required a review after a certain period of time, the required time after that was established in that meeting, depending on how many comments they had. So say it was a 1 year review and there were no or very little comments, and they could say, okay, now we're going to go 5 years, and then we'd have it in 5 years, or,
okay.
So until a time it would happen that either, the business relocates or closes or moves, or until, that there's just no more complaints to be established. But since they have a conditional use permit, all the conditions still need to apply. And if we ever get any complaints about the conditional use permit conditions and they're not following them, it can always be opened at any time.
Right. Bill, in your opinion, would we need to include language in this first resolution as to what an extended period would be after the first review, or can that be decided at that review?
I agree with Gordon. It'd be perfectly fine to establish it at that review. You could say, actually, I think Gordon's comments make more sense, because it's quite likely that one of two things will happen. Either if you have a review in a year, people are gonna be satisfied that everything's just fine and there won't be any interest, and we'll have a very short hearing, or people will be up in arms if there's problems. But I seriously doubt there'll be one or two complaints. It's going to be all or nothing is my guess.
Right. Yeah. That seems logical, and often people are more likely to complain about something than they are to compliment it. If they have good things to say about it, they usually keep that to themselves. So.
Right. And of course, we have with any complaints or positive comments we get about either or, has to be taken with a grain of salt. And of course, we have to research it and see if it's justified. So if somebody says they saw some weirdo walking down Main Street, does that mean they came from that business, or does it just mean there was just, that's typical behavior of what we see every day? So obviously, we would have to do some research in any of those complaints that we get, or pro comments that we get even.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's often very telling at a review like that to hear from the police department, the fire department, have there been calls for service? That sort of thing that's objectively verifiable.
Yeah. I would just make a comment with respect. I don't know who else was on council. I think Councilmember Couchman was on council with me when we made the decision to allow the halfway house. There was a lot of controversy with that topic, a lot of concerns, and a lot of the public came out not necessarily in support of that facility being opened. And so they've quietly been in business for many, many, many years. And it's interesting because I remember receiving compliments on some improvements that they had made, and people didn't realize what business was there. And so, it's just, I think the perception more than anything is the knee jerk, right? There's a knee jerk reaction on maybe not allowing certain types of businesses. And I have the same concerns as well, right? But you also have to consider people had those same concerns with Victory Outreach being on Main Street as well, right? And so they had those concerns with the religious organization that maybe, at least at the time, catered to people that had previous issues. And I'm not trying to categorize anybody at Victory Outreach, so please, my apologies to anybody that goes there. But those were some of the concerns that were expressed. We even had the same concerns expressed to us, if you all recall, many of us will, at 229 Main Street. That's the Imperial County Behavioral Health Building. And there was concerns with that as well. They'd be dishing out medication and other things as well. So it's not anything foreign to us. I will say this though, and this is just my opinion, our community has changed, right? We drive around and our community has changed. There are certainly areas of development that are new, and there's areas of development that are not, right? And so for me, I'm all about aesthetics, right? I want to see things improve, right? Is this the best business that can fall into this building? No, not in my opinion. However, there is financial investment. If there is a significant improvement, and if they're able to, at least address the concerns that we have and the public has had, even if it's for a limited time, just to kind of give a trial run, that might be the right approach, but there are empty buildings throughout Main Street, right? And there isn't a big demand for investment. That's just fact, right? I bought a building in downtown Brawley that had been sitting vacant for years, and I made the investment and I operate out of it, and I'm here now, right? And so if it doesn't, if I didn't invest it, who would, right? And if somebody's not investing in downtown Main Street, the 500 and 600 block, then who will do that, right? I know that we want, and we have these visions of maybe a different era, but I can tell you growing up, it really wasn't that fantastic to begin with, right? And that's the truth. And so I used to tell people that I was like, they would say, well, there were so many businesses. Well, yeah, but things are different today. The way people purchase, and COVID's just accelerated that. It's just changed the way people buy, the way people shop, the way they're going out. I just want to see improvement. And if there's an opportunity to improve a facility, that's why I asked about renderings. That's why I asked about what is it going to look like? Is it going to be painted over? Is there going to be new stucco? Are the windows going to be cleaned up? Is the facility itself going to look like a nice, beautiful medical facility that can blend in to the area? Then that makes a lot of difference. But if it's going to be like many restaurants that we've seen in Brawley, that they change the name, they don't do anything to improve the facility itself, and it looks terrible, then I'm not in favor of that, right? And maybe I'm going off on a tangent here, but those are just, I'm expressing some opinions of mine. And I do want to see people receive treatment. I know that there's an epidemic here, and we can't be blind to that either. But I think honestly, I've heard so many people tell me like, well, that's the wrong place. Well, what's the right place, right? I don't have an answer for that, And so just think of like the marijuana shops in Imperial, just because they changed the aesthetics and they changed the building, it became way more acceptable for the public to go in there and look at it and have it and tolerate it, right? And maybe that's just what this is as well. My concerns though are just with larger groups, Dr. Hoyt, with larger groups. Do you have experience in, you said you have group therapy now, but how do you control and manage those larger groups when they're in there as opposed to one-on-one? Because if people are going through, substance abuse treatment and it's counseling services, maybe, their perceptions and their judgments may be a little bit skewed. And once you have, 10, 15 people together, what can that do to people? I mean, is there tendency to have violent encounters? Have you had that before?
No.
What are the things that we can expect?
Yeah, we've never had any violence at any of our programs. I'm knocking wood in the 10 years I've been working with felons, either between each other or between staff. We limit our group size to 10 participants because I think it loses fidelity once you move past that. That's why everybody checks in at the front. If somebody was under the influence or looked like they were having a tough time, we could have a counselor pull them to the side and meet with them and not have them do group that day. So there's a lot of clinical strategies that we can use to manage people that are having a tough time.
Dr. Hoyt, and since you're on that, and I asked, how would you manage other things? But let me ask you something, and I just want an honest answer here, not that you wouldn't. Sure. What happens when you do have issues? What type of issues do you have?
It's not usually, maybe somebody will escalate talking about an issue with a family member or a peer right? And they'll get very demonstrative and they might get loud. But that's really the extent of it. We've never had, we're the good guys. Even in our relationship with the halfway house, they like us the best because we're the touchy-feely, We're the therapists. They don't come to us for shots and we're not taking money from them. It's usually a very positive experience and environment. So, the worst thing that would happen would be that somebody would show up high or drunk. And at that point, we would ask them to leave. And we would have a family member come get them because obviously we can't have them driving, right? Because we recognize they're under the influence and we're liable. That would probably be the most egregious thing, beyond somebody getting louder than I'm comfortable with.
And if they are high or drunk, does that lead to any other encounters there? Where they are just more than loud, maybe they're just more of a nuisance, maybe at the facility or outside the facility?
Yeah, therapy can't be therapeutic when people are high. So they don't even engage in the treatment. Even if they're coming in for one-on-one, the session doesn't start beyond managing their behavior and their next step. It's we're not engaging in therapy at that point. It happens very infrequently, believe it or not. It's something that's can be more frequent if it's somebody's initial visit, because it may be a family member trying to coax them in. But 99% of the time, it just doesn't happen. They're too ashamed. They don't want to come in embarrassed.
Understood.
Yeah.
And I've seen other encounters, obviously liquor stores and other places too, where people are just losing their cool and being loud. So that's I think my way of thinking is like it happens everywhere. It's not just in one environment. But I just needed some clarification. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
Gordon, you had something.
Yeah, I just one thing. I agree with Councilmember Nava in terms of the issue of trying to get those vacant buildings filled up. And I know it's not necessarily the primary use that the downtown specific plan asked for, but it does include it's not just retail and restaurants. It does include medical, and we do have a lot of doctors' offices and things down there, which usually do pay better than retail and medical, which gives you some more employees down there to spend some money downtown. And with the vacancy rate we had, I can understand if this was like the last building or the last couple of buildings left on Main Street, that we would want them more for retail or anything, to say, we would rather reserve this for that type of use. That makes sense. But with the vacancy rate and the vacant lots we have, I think it would make more sense to have somebody who's going to take care of a building. And if you'd like, as part of the potential resolution, that Dr. Hoyt could provide some, elevations and improvements to show what you would do to the building to make it look good. I think that's more important, because I think, and it's not more about the use, but if the area looks nice, then you're more likely to have investment from other people in the surrounding properties that are either for sale or for lease to move in. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. No, Gordon, if you don't mind, just to glom on, I think there was a comment made. I believe maybe it was the comments read by, I don't remember, it was the chamber, but some notion about the council wants to fill these vacant buildings at all cost. And that has never come from my mouth. And I'm not aware of any other council members that have, I don't know, said that officially. So that's never been the objective. I think the objective is to be as supportive as we can to all small business that wants to engage, especially downtown, with the massive amount of attention I think our community has put toward that. So I want to make that clear. There has never been some kind of objective, based on that. But outside of that, Dr. Hoyt, would you, not so much condition, but would you be willing to provide those things? Like you said, you're a little reticent to make those investments if you don't know you're going to be in the building. But if you were to, would that be something, for example, if we did have a 6-month review, that you would be able to provide? I think those exterior improvements, these would be the same questions we would ask any business. And I want the public to know, we don't have that option for most businesses. If you want to open a bookstore and go open up down there, we really don't have that input because it doesn't come to council, right? This is an opportunity for us, with the conditions based in the CUP. I think it's pretty reasonable to maybe not only have that as a potential, improvement, but I know that means a lot to the community, because that is often said to, I'm sure, many of us. So I'm just putting that out. It's not a yes or no. I just assume maybe, obviously there's not renderings or elevations today, but if there's definitely, kind of a storefront improvement that could be made, I think that goes a long ways in that downtown core area.
Sure, I'd be happy to provide that. And almost to a person, when I've talked to people, whether they're in favor or not, they've asked me if I'm going to fix the sign and, like, what is my plan for the front? And, it's unfortunate I couldn't show you my other building. made all these slides and did all this, but it's a really beautiful space. And Tony has done a nice job, I think, with his frontage, and I'm more than happy to do that. We're, you know, I'm as into aesthetic as most people, and I feel like that one of the ways to help entice people to come in is to have a professional building that looks welcoming. And so,
Yeah,
of course,
and,
I'm happy to
Doctor,
do
the pictures, I think the pictures you submitted, they are in our council packet and they are available publicly. So yeah, I've
Thank you.
had the opportunity to see them.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilman Couchman, did you have something? I thought you interjected somewhere.
Well, I have some comments. I don't know how much I want to go into this. I think, well, from my viewpoint, it's a business versus an emotional decision. We don't often have the ability necessarily to say no or yes. Usually it's out of our hands. I will state that when the halfway house came in, we were kind of forced into that decision, and we didn't really ever, I don't think, ever give full approval. I think basically they said that was what they were going to do, and we had no option in that situation in order to make that decision. We weren't given that option. In this situation, we do have that option to decide what we wish to do. We've made one decision before in this area on the Main Street where we did not allow something similar to go in on the section of Main Street where the dance studio was and some of the other businesses that were down further to the west. This is a business decision for Brawley downtown. I understand that the buildings are empty and I understand all of that. However, I think Brawley downtown, if we make this decision as a yes, I feel it has an impact. If we make the decision as a no, it could have an impact, but it may not have the impact that we believe it will to that area. I think we've seen some examples of things gone bad with these kind of decisions for downtown. I've seen it in Centro. I may have seen it in Calexico. I'm not sure about that one. In Yuma, they had some problem where they were advancing their Main Street area, and now then governmental offices fill a lot of their Main Street area, although it is coming back now. But they had some failures, and then they had some successes with that in the Yuma area. I think as far as the downtown goes, it may never be like it was when I was a child. I've been here 67 years. At one time, the downtown was a very bustling area, almost all retail of some nature, doctor's offices, finance places, and retail. I don't know that we'll ever get back to that point in time, but I have some concerns about this issue. I have the utmost respect for Dr. Hoyt. I have the utmost respect for the treatment that the individuals may receive. And I will say that my family over the years has been impacted by drug addiction and by addictions to other substances. And we've had to deal with that as a family and through medical and all of that type of thing. So I have feelings for that also. I do not think, though, that a temporary situation works out the best, because what I've found is when a business owner invests a tremendous amount of money into a facility, and then in a year we tell them, because of the complaints that we've received, we can't allow you to continue to do business there. I think that puts us in a more awkward situation than if we just say no up front or say yes up front, whatever we want to do. I don't think time limits work very well when major investments are made. I think time limits may work in a more temporary type situation, or a conditional use permit for somebody that has another type of business that's more transitory, or they can move very readily. When you're talking about permanent structures and large investments, 6 months or a year don't work very well. So from my experience and being on the council, it doesn't work very well. So with that all said, what I've tried to keep an open mind about the whole thing, I will state that I believe that I've gotten more comments to the negative than I've gotten to the positive. In fact, in the overall scheme of things, I've gotten very few comments to the positive, and most of the comments from my constituents have been in the negative. And so that's the way I'm leaning. I don't expect any other, I don't speak for the whole council. I only speak for myself as an individual council member. And so with that said, I think that's all I really need to say at this point in time.
Council Member Couchman, this is George. Just a point of clarification with respect to the halfway house, they did come before us to see if we would offer support. Without our support, they wouldn't be able to offer those services. So we did have a say in that. Additionally, in this situation, I think the difference is that Dr. Hoyt now owns that facility, owns that building, right? And so, although I think you're correct in if we put restrictions in temporarily, it wouldn't necessarily, it would be more difficult for us. But even now, as it stands now, if it's denied, she's stuck with a building that isn't going to do anything unless it's sold or a tenant's put in there. So it's a little bit of a different situation. That's why I'm giving it further consideration at the moment. But you know, all of these circumstances, all these situations are a little bit different. This one, you know, we also have to, you know, consider the fact that she has been operating there for 4 years, you know, quietly and, you know, without really any involvement from the city council or the city at all. So that's I think another thing that we need to consider. So just you know, I want to make sure that we have a balanced approach to this and not just one way or another. And I'm not saying that we are, but you know, it's just a counterpoint to a point. So thank you.
Okay. I did, you know, I had a few thoughts on it. I know that there's passions on both sides of the issue here. I know Dr. Hoyt is passionate about what she does. I don't get the feeling that this is just about profit, although she's making good money doing what she's doing. And, you know, that she wouldn't do it if it weren't going to be profitable. But I do perceive that there's passion there for what you do, Dr. Hoyt, and that your goal is to help people that are, you know, in bondage to addiction one way or another. I have visited your facility there in Tony Reynosa's building, and we do have those photos in our packet, and it's nicely done. It's clean. It's you know, well maintained. Certainly better than some of the other buildings on that block. And so I have every confidence that that's what would be done in this new building. I would feel, personally, I would feel better about the CUP if it included a timeline for a review period that isn't just, well, as Donnie mentioned, you know, that takes effect after business has begun in that building, so that, you know, people have the ability to keep an eye on it and see if it's something that you know, that's working for that area of town. I realize that I think a lot of people feel like once you get your foot in the door with a facility like this, it's much harder to extract that facility from a block like this downtown. But I do think it would put a lot of people's minds at ease if there were the opportunity, not just understood as part of a conditional use permit, but written into the conditions that there is a review period, and that along with that review period, there's, as I think Donnie mentioned, the ability to see renderings. I would like to see those really, you know, if it were approved sooner rather than later. And I know that Bill mentioned that for the legality of it, we'll need to have a resolution that we read and approve at another meeting. I would, you know, I don't know how possible it is to, how feasible it is to have those renderings by that meeting, but whatever the case, it would be nice to see what's going to happen with that storefront, at least if it's approved. But yeah, I would feel better because I do have some of those same, I'm torn on the issue myself, but I have some of those same concerns about the fact that this is, you know, originally and ultimately would be nice to have it as retail space. And considering the fact that we're looking into and moving forward with bringing on an economic development person within the city structure, the hope is that that person, part of his job description would be, you know, at least being very accommodating to retail businesses that we could attract to come to downtown. But again, I recognize the fact that we do have a lot of vacant buildings there, that having something in there, cleaning it up and using it would be better than having nothing in there most of the time. So along those lines, my personal feeling is that it would be good to have a review period where Dr. Hoyt would have to come back. And I would assume that would be before council rather than the DRC or the Planning Commission, where people could make comments, we could make comments and, you know, approve or deny a continuance or continuation of that conditional use permit. I think we've, Mr. Castro, did you have something?
Yes, sir. I haven't had an opportunity to say much, but Dr. Hoy, I feel for you. I know that you've made an investment, you purchased the building, and a review period for me just wouldn't do it either. We approve it or we don't, and I understand a review period gives that opportunity to then deny or pull that permit. But I would hate to see you spend that money, and I would hate to see it not work out, and 6 months later or a year later we pull that permit from you. I've talked to a lot of folks in the community, and the question to me is, where do we want this downtown? What do we want it to look like? I understand all the issues. I understand there are empty buildings. I understand no one's kicking the door down and moving. I get all that. But what do we want to see our community look like downtown? And honestly, seeing more churches, seeing more thrift stores, more day out centers. That's just to me, it's not the direction that I want to see this downtown going. And I appreciate what you're doing, and I understand the services that you're provided, and I understand how they're tied to that federal halfway house. But honestly, it's just, to me, I have to agree with this, with the chamber on this. And they might not have taken the right steps, and they might not have done, they might not have done what was right. And maybe posting that a methadone clinic was coming was absolutely wrong. And I have to agree with you, it was wrong. But I do agree with them that we want to see something different. And if we do bring this downtown, it's just going to turn into a bunch of clinics, churches, thrift shops, and we want to see, in order to improve the quality of life, I think we got to see something different there. And I will say to you, Dr. Hoyt, as a Latino, you said that we are enablers and also the biggest supporters. I'm far from an enabler, and I haven't met one yet that's an enabler yet. So we're very tough on our own.
I was speaking more to the fact that many of our people, not only are they raising their children's children because they're addicted, but
that I do agree with.
I have many grandmothers who are supporting adolescent sons who are in their early 30s. I'm calling them adolescents because that was when they started getting high. And they're still not, mowing the lawn or helping around the house, but they have a warm place to stay and food, regardless of the drugs that they're using or the jewelry they're selling to get them. And you're not going to get that this side of the 5. I can tell you that. Yeah. It's a gift.
We're in Brawley, not San Diego.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a gift.
Reference to the side of the 5.
Yeah, it's a gift of the community. And I think it's part of why I fell in love with it. Because there's never a loss of hope, and there's never a loss of keeping the family together. And
Dr.
so
would you be open to, and this is just a little bit of brainstorming, maybe, would you be open? You said you were going to open up a part of the building on the front side, and the back half would be empty, and then upstairs would be empty as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you be open to perhaps improving the back side of the building and then bringing in tenants on the front side of the building for another type of business? Just a question.
I thought about actually having our clients who want to do small business be able to do that out of the back or something like that to foster small business, because it's 7,000 square feet. I don't even think in my wildest dreams I could fill that space. But again, there's, I may need another conditional use permit. Do you know what I mean? I think the options are limitless in terms of what that building can be used for in terms of a community resource. And I support that 1,000%. The bottom line is I can do what I do in Tony's space. I could continue to do it there. It's small. And that would leave me with probably 5,000 square feet for whatever. And I have had fantasies of, putting something out to the community. Give me your business proposition. Give me your business plan. What have you always wanted to do? I don't think I could afford to build a kitchen, but I would be happy to allow people to use our space to start that. I'm 100% open to that. I think we need something creative and different, and I have plenty of space to do it. So I'll just say that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we've probably discussed as much as we need to. And I'd like to call for the question. Is there anyone that would like to make a motion approving or denying the CUP as we have it in front of us, or with any additional conditions such as a timeline for a review?
This is Councilmember Nava. I won't make a motion yet, but just a food for thought for the rest of council. Now there's comments, Councilmember Castro had mentioned, the types of businesses that are located in downtown. And that's going to be a challenge. I mean, it has been a challenge since the entire time I've been on council. But I'm certainly open, and that's the thing I think we all need to be, is open to what's really out there. I mean, these are the businesses that are wanting to locate in our downtown, in our community.
Hello?
And it's not,
I'm in my conditional use permit hearing with the county. Could you call your sister?
I think that's Dr. Hoyt having to address an emergency at home there. Okay. So, but again, it's, what we're faced with is just deciding whether or not we'll have some sort of conditional permit for this facility. I'm open to it because, quite honestly, again, that's a facility and that's a building that's vacant currently. And if we don't fill things in, if we don't improve things, and again, those are community services. If they're working with the clientele from Brawley, those are the people that we represent. You have to consider that. It's not just the things that we want to represent and who we want to represent. We don't get a choice in that. We really do have to represent our community. And if our community is suffering from these ailments and drug addiction, there's somebody who's willing to invest, who has invested, who's operated here successfully for multiple years, who's making a change in that. Why not give them some time to further that? And if it doesn't work, I don't necessarily agree that we can't just pull a license. I would hope that that's not the case. I hope that they are very quietly successful, that we don't ever even hear about them. It's a nice facility. People come in, come out. It's just business as usual. That's happened with other facilities here within the city of Brawley that we've had opposition to before. And if that's the case here, and we're treating residents of the city, of the people that we do represent, I just can't see how that can hurt us. If we wait to see somebody else that'll go in and make the financial investment in our community, that's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough. She already has a federal contract, so that's going to be paying. That pays for the facility, that pays for staff time, that pays for treatment, that pays for a lot of things. So it's not a matter of will they come? They will come. But I guess our concerns, or at least mine, were more of on the level of, what's it going to look like? I want to make sure that there are not, what we perceive as drug addicts out in front of the building, those sorts of things. And I think that's a concern that many people have. If those things can be addressed, right? And if we can give it some time, just a narrow window of time to prove themselves even further, because they have been doing this for multiple years, it's back in our hands. So anyway, that's my argument. I know that there's concerns with Councilmember Country and Councilmember Castro. But I'm open to it. I'm not going to say that I'm 100% for it. This is the greatest thing ever. It's not. I wish we didn't have to. I wish this never even came before us, right? That'd be even better. But it is, and we have to decide. We're elected to decide. But remember, we're also elected to represent the community. And yeah, there are people that are talking and being a little bit more vocal and saying like, no, that's not what we want. But what about all of the silent people, right? The ones that are seeking treatment, the ones whose family members need treatment. Those are a lot of the people that we represent. So that's kind of the balance, right? That we have to weigh. And it's not an easy decision. I mean, it's easy to say one thing, but to really have to live by it, it's another one entirely. But anyway, I'll leave it to the rest of council. Thank you.
That was Mr. Smith goes to Brawley right there. That was a good speech. All right. So Mr. Nava didn't want to make a motion, but I guess I should also ask if no one wants to make a motion for or against the CUP tonight, do we want to table this to gain some more knowledge about the facility and come back at another meeting to further discuss and approve or deny it at that point?
I do not. I think we've discussed it plenty. And the other thing I assume, so I'll be willing to make a motion, but just one more question for Bill. When it does come back in the resolution, that's still an opportunity for passing or not passing the resolution, true or not? Bill, we can't hear you. Sorry, on mute, I think.
I unmuted it. Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what you decide now is tentative and subject to council approval of the resolution with findings.
Okay. That's what I figured. So I think there's another bite of the apple no matter what. So I mean, maybe rather than tabling, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve the CUP with the addition of a review period to occur. I don't know if this is the right time period, but 6 months. And at that 6 month, I would assume I think it was mentioned about maybe getting to a year. And then at that point, so maybe a 6 month review period. And then after the 6 month review period, I don't know if we can include in that the renderings or some aesthetic improvement that I think is important for downtown. And then after that, the CUP would continue on, and I would assume perpetuity unless, I guess that's not really a motion, it's a discussion motion. Is there any input?
Councilmember Wharton, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just with respect to your motion, it was, I know it was a little bit long, but with respect to your motion, would there be any consideration for making the improvements prior to occupancy?
There could be. That's why I said we didn't really discuss those maybe finer details. So perhaps, I don't know if I'll be willing to make that motion again once we kind of decide that. But I think more important, if I think the CUP as it's presented, putting in the 6 month review, I think period is key. And then if appropriate, prior to that, at least some visual renderings, whatnot, that can be viewed with plans for those improvement as part of the condition. So if those improvements aren't made, then obviously it would render that CUP, I guess, not in violation, but out of compliance. So I would like to put that in. I see Gordon nodding his head. So if Bill,
just to reaffirm what you're saying, yes, we can make a condition on the timeline, and also to say that the improvements, at least from the outside, if that's what you're looking at mostly, need to be done before certificate of occupancy. That is totally doable. Yes.
I would think that would be a best case scenario, acknowledging a couple more of the issues. So I will make that motion to approve with those stipulations. Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I clarify? Would the 6 month review occur 6 months after occupancy? Is that the motion?
Yeah. Go ahead, Donnie.
Okay.
That's what I meant. That's what I intended. So
okay, that's what I understand. Then. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say after occupancy, because obviously, starting it before they do the improvements, it kind of defeats the purpose, 6 months from the time when they begin operations, right? And we'll know that date because we'll know the COO date at that time. And then we can schedule a public hearing again 6 months after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand the motion. It was a motion to approve the CUP and having a 6 month review after occupancy and having the aesthetic improvements made prior to occupancy. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Now, another point of clarification. Are you saying that, Gordon, the the initial 6-month review or part of the conditions would be that within the first 6 months after approval, that those improvements to the facade, or at least the front of the building, will need to be made within those 6 months. Then they can open for business. And then a 6-month review as far as business operation after that. Are we adding a timeline for improvements to be completed is my question.
Yeah, no, because they have to get their, any building permits that they need to do for any changes to the building, interior, exterior, including the facade. You know, from that date that we issue the certificate of occupancy and they get their business license, that is the day that the 6 months would begin.
Okay, for the review period, I guess my question is, and has more to do with the fact that, you know, there are some buildings that are purchased, vacant buildings that are purchased downtown that then sit vacant, you know, owned by the new owner, but no improvements are being made for years at a time. So I guess my question is this another condition that should be added, that there is a time limit or a time frame in which those improvements need to be made and a C of O issued?
Yes, but we could do that too. We can add another condition that says this needs to be done within 6 months, 12 months, whatever I think Dr. Hoyt would think is probably appropriate with the, you know, ability of getting, you know, an architect to do these improvements. And I would say probably it shouldn't probably be more than a year. And then,
Okay.
you know, but I, you know, I don't know, sometimes think, you know, I don't know with the COVID now and everything's taking a little longer, could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be a year. But before she actually moves over to the property, all of the building permits need to be completed and the certificate of occupancy needs to be issued by a certain date. And if you want to make that 1 year, then that's fine. And then we can work out the 6 months after that point.
Okay, is that something, Bill, that could be discussed with Dr. Hoyt before the resolution is drawn up, that will stipulate then as a condition the time period by which the improvements need to be made in order to comply with the conditional use permit?
Yes, that's certainly something we can do. Again, what council's basically doing is giving Gordon and I direction on what kind of resolution you want to see in front of you next time.
Right.
So we can have discussions with her, make sure that what we're talking about is doable. And then remember, when we get to the next meeting, that resolution is just on paper. It can be changed at that time, whatever
or denied
necessary,
or denied at that time as well.
Yes, or denied at that time. This is just like a discussion direction where you're not taking official action. You'll notice it on your agenda. It's not agendized for action. It's to give us direction on what kind of resolution we are supposed to present to you next time.
Right. And what kind of conditions need to be included as additional conditions other than the ones that were already established. So yeah, anything after, you know, if things change and you find them to be insufficient as Mr. Smearden and I rewrite them in the resolution, you can either, you know, deny them, approve them, or ask for changes at that time.
I would just say this is just, I know there was a motion, there hasn't been a second yet, but if there's a time to do something like this, it's now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Things aren't clearing up just now. So there isn't, you know, people going to work and school like they were previously. So if there's going to be a time to try this, it's maybe an opportune time. So I would just say the sooner the better, and let's see if it works. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But I'm confident that with so much on the line for Dr. Hoyt, that they'll do the right thing. That's just my opinion. I'm in business myself. The last thing I want is to bring negative attention to my business. That's anybody who's in business, that's the last thing that they want, especially if they have a federal contract, because then you lose that. It's a 10-year contract, they're 4 years into it. So those are the things that we got to consider. And so anyway, yeah, there's a motion, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's completed yet. Donnie, did you want to add any language to that motion having to do with a time frame for improvements to be made, to be completed?
I think the 1 year was fine. And again, I think anything else, so we don't have to continue to discuss and add to the motion, is its direction, right? So the direction's there. I would choose to see that if this is successful, to come back at the next meeting and we can read the exact language at that time. So my motion still stands to approve the CUP with the stipulation of the 6-month review. And then let's call it the 1 year period to make the aesthetic improvements prior to occupancy or at occupancy. If it's decided it's after occupancy, that 1 year period. So I don't want to keep adding to it and confuse it. So if we can move forward with that, that's enough information for staff. That's my motion.
Okay. We have a motion from Councilman Wharton. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, second.
Just clarification though, on the occupancy, my desire was to have the improvements, the aesthetic improvements on the exterior of the building made prior to occupancy. So if that's the motion, then I would support that.
I would, then that was my original motion. So yeah, unless if the resolution comes back differently, we can debate that at that time. So yeah, that's my motion.
Okay.
Mayor Hamby, just for clarification, all we're voting on right now is just basically on the guidance we're giving to staff. This isn't going to approve a conditional use permit or deny it, correct?
Bill, clarify that for us, please.
Yes, that's correct. You're not making a final decision at this point in time. You're just giving us, Gordon and I, direction on what your resolution needs to look like. And it won't be final until next time. And you can revise it at that time, or you can deny it at that time.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
This is George, aye.
Donnie, aye.
Okay, those opposed, nay.
Sam, no.
This is Ramon, no.
And I vote nay as well. So as it stands, that's been denied. The CUP has been denied at this hearing. Okay, thank you for that deliberation. Anything else to add to that, Bill?
So what I'll do is I'll bring you back a motion, a resolution denying it with findings. And then again, we're going to have that discussion next time.
Okay.
With respect to the findings, Bill, would they need to be presented today, or the findings need to be presented at that time?
What I'm going to do is present to you draft findings that you'll either accept, reject, or amend. So that there's something that we're looking at rather than trying to do it out of thin air off the top of our heads.
Bill, will we see those in advance of the meeting?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay,
In your agenda packet.
very good.
Okay, thank you. That was difficult. It, I came into it torn. I really, there are good points on both sides. And so, it's a difficult topic, a difficult decision to make. So thank you all for your deliberation.
Yeah, and I appreciate Dr. Hoyt and the rest of council. It is I know that there's differing opinions on what we want to see, but it's discussed and it is what it is at this point. So I just hope that Dr. Hoyt can continue to be successful in what she's doing and offering treatment, and we move on.
Thank you for that. Okay, we will move on to item 5 on our agenda. This is regular business, and we'll start with 5A, which is an update on City of Brawley declaration of local emergency as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. And under that, to begin with, we will have an update from the CEO of Pioneers Memorial Healthcare District, Larry Lewis. Is he on deck?
He is on deck, and I'm working to upload a quick presentation.
Okay.
Poor Larry, we had you on hold there for like 2 hours, man. Look at, you know, we went home, took a nap, and came back. You know?
Pretty sure I've seen worse. Armando, I'm gonna. Does that look like a screen to you guys now?
Not
No, sir.
yet.
Nope.
Unless by screen, it's a picture of you and then your motorcycle in the back and a flag. No.
He said it was okay to share, and maybe this is it here. Hang on. How's that?
There we go.
All right.
That's it.
So just some quick updates. I know most of you have heard many of the reports coming out of the state and the county, and you're very up to date on those. Just a little bit of change from where we're at here. This is our graph of inpatients that are in the county. And you can see back here in July where we were hitting our peaks up there at close to 100. And we really did go down into single digits about early mid-September. And then it's gone crazy. And I think the importance of knowing this right now is we look at San Diego County, it's the same thing. We look at the new cases that are for the entire country, it's the same thing. There are deaths that follow the same kind of track. I'm sorry, that's Arizona there. There's comparisons of California, Florida. Point being still that every place in the country is hitting the same surge that we are. And it is extreme. The deaths follow the same kind of curve, maybe not as dramatic. And I can only equate that to there's a little more that's been learned about how to treat the disease, but it's still fairly dramatic to see those kinds of increases again. So the whole country and our county under siege, literally, when it comes to the COVID pandemic. Nobody's left unaffected. The good news is that there are more things like ventilators. They're still not the comprehensive ventilators that would be the best. There's a lot of transport ventilators out there, which they have, you know, they take a lot more attention and judgment rather than really the computer taking over and having fine tuning. The PPEs have also increased. We have an inventory stockpile that was directed by the state. We've, I believe, been able to accumulate 30 days of stockpile of that, so that has not been a concern lately. Staffing support is always going to be the most serious concern. One of the places they started was they wanted a contingency plan about where we would get extra beds. Well, we provided all of that information, but when it came down to it, there's very strict ratios that we have to live within from state regulations. And no matter what kind of beds you can create, there's a limitation on staff. And during the summertime surge, at least we were a little bit unique and required more attention. So we had more resources from the state and from you know, National Guard and the DMAT teams. And so we got a lot of attention and we were able to do better at staffing it during the summertime. But now we're talking about facing competition from every hospital in the country. I heard, you know, El Centro making a plea this last week, and their response from the federal level was, you know, you're not the worst. if you look at Riverside and some of the hospitals over there, some of them just don't have even enough ventilators to go around right now. And it's much worse than what we're facing right now. So we did get a lot of assistance here though, as did El Centro. So we do have like registry nurses. You can see that's quite a large count there. I'm sure we have at least a couple of intensivists that came from the state, as well as hospitalists. So we're able to keep up with more of the ICU patients. We did also just today receive 11 ER medics out there, and then some respiratory therapists as well. So the help is coming, but it's about to end. In beds, we did normally have an ICU bed count of 8. We did reopen the surge space that's immediately adjacent to the ICU, where we do have a full house there now too of 12. In the weeks coming, you can see down here where we've created 10 beds in the auditorium. Once we have enough staff to occupy that, that will free up 10 beds up on the second floor to be converted into ICU beds. It is quite a bit of pressure right now on, you can see that we have 12 patients in there right now, just waiting for beds. So we have 77 plus 12, 89 total patients in here, which our normal is like 55. So it's quite a bit of extra. This gives you a little more graphic view of it with an added, this is the model that the state is predicting right now for mid-January. This is where we're at today, but this is what they expect it's going to be. So it could get seriously out of hand in a hurry. We're going to be holding a meeting here Thursday with our administrative staff team to not just talk about being prepared, but how do you prepare for double and triple the amount of COVID patients. This was the hospital projections that came from the state. Hospitalization rates going from 13,000 today to 30,000 in the state. So again, it's not quite tripling that, but it is more than doubling that. And then ICU patients is, again, significantly more than double here. And that's 2820 is how many literally today. I think on the 12th of November was when that was, excuse me, December is when that was created. So it's got a ways to go yet. We did repurpose some resources. We did have to cut way back on elective surgeries again, freeing up some RNs, case management, freeing up 4 RNs there. Quality management, even our director and our risk manager are taking some shifts on the floors in the ER. And then we're looking at how do we free up the few nurses that we have in the clinic operations. We do also have more ample testing available. We did restart the drive-through testing in the emergency room. You can see the tent's been expanded back there. We usually see like 3 or 4 waiting in line in their cars. It also has a separate area to hold those that are under investigation. They're waiting for results to come back, and a separate space for COVID patients that are waiting that can't be placed yet. We also have drive-through back up on the Legion Clinic across the street. Rapid testing, we're only reserving that for the most symptomatic patients, and those symptoms would require them to be admitted to the hospital. So those things we need answers for quickly. We're trying to conserve those. That's the least available supply out there. We're 100% testing any patients that are admitted and any emergency surgery patients. We did get another testing modality out there. There's one that we use that's quite a bit less expensive. It's the Abbott. If you have symptoms, it'll test with a high degree of accuracy whether or not you have COVID positive. What it doesn't tell us is if it's negative, it's wrong about 40% of the time. And that's been the same for most of those tests that are done out in the clinics right now. You have to be careful about the false negative rate out there. In a couple of weeks, we will have finished the in-house calibration and testing of a third source for rapid testing. That will increase our availability. It's kind of the standard that everybody's following right now. When there's not enough from one type of vendor, we switch to the next one. So now we have 2 sources of supplies and equipment. Additional laboratories have started. There's one, where is that, Valencia, somewhere like that, that has been opened up. And then the county still has, I think, 2 different sites that are providing 165 tests a day. And then I'm not going to say we're unlimited on those send out tests, but we haven't had any problems lately. And they seem to have worked out all their bugs regarding the turnaround times. Typically, it had been 2 to 3 days. They're down to 1 or 2 days right now. There was a time where they were like 7, 8, 9 days, and that was driving everybody crazy. So a lot of those bugs have started to been worked out. The vaccines are out there. We received word that, and we did place an order. 975 are coming from Pfizer, from Pfizer within the next week. We have had committees out there that looked at the process for managing those and administering those. There are shipping containers that can maintain those vaccines for up to 5 days once they leave the county ultra low freezers. The ultra low freezers are extremely hard to find right now, and we've been put off like 2 months now. So we're finally just agreed that we'll take our shipments from the county, as will El Centro, and we'll just have to plan it really well. We're looking for people here at the hospital to sign up for it according to priority. So like the first responders, that'll be the ER, the first responders are the people out in the field, whether it's fire, police, EMTs, etc. They're going to get a fair share of that also. But then in the hospitals, the direct frontline people like the ER and ICU, some of the med surge areas, they're going to get the first doses out there to try to keep them as healthy as possible. Then the nursing home residents are also going to be administered some vaccines in short order. I don't have the exact timeline on them. There is only enough to vaccinate in this first round, about 1/3 of the hospital workforce. We do expect to see Moderna come by with, I think they said 1,200 doses within a week after the first Pfizer doses. And then the Pfizer is going to continue to ship as we go along. So with 900 employees out there and 330 doses coming here, it just won't be enough for everybody right off. But hopefully within 4 weeks or so, we'll have everybody immunized here at the hospital that wants to be. It is not mandatory. There are, differing opinions out there or concerns, but by and large, the strongest communications we hear from the state, from the hospital association, from medical staff, you're much better off taking these than not. It appears to be the only way to bend this curve in the future. They are afraid to make any predictions about the impact. There is one that I saw out there that I think UCSD had secured from the United Kingdom that took into account what the vaccines might do to bend the curve of new cases and hospitalizations. And it does bend it and can actually start turning it back, but there's not going to be enough out there in the next 6 months to really make a huge difference. And that's where they start to have concerns about what's the adoption rate and how fast are people going to be able to get vaccinated. So too many unknowns to say this is going to change in the next few months. So the big question out there is, what happens? Volumes double in the next month or triple? There won't be enough physicians and nurses and others And we're already being told that they're running out of beds statewide. It's going to be a big concern. We're trying to prep our staff for being ready for this surge again. But it's a difficult task because they've already been at it for 8 and 9 months now. Ventilators, again, they're much less sophisticated, but we'll have to end up using those. Their transport ventilators is what they're planned to do, so there's usually limited time use, but it's going to require more close attention by the respiratory therapist, the nurses, and the physicians. We did create that additional internal space. It's not been approved yet, but there's another 8 beds in addition to the 6 in the ER overflow and the 10 that'll be created based on shuffling things around with the auditorium. But again, when you're talking about those size of numbers, it's going to put a dent in it is all it's going to do. We have spoken with some other alternate care sites that would house a great deal more if they were of low enough acuity. But again, we'll end up having to make do with what we can. The last thing there is there's no place to ship. We've been holding anywhere from 8 to 16 patients in our ER that need hospitalization, but we don't have room and nobody across the state has room. So it becomes very difficult. There is room if they require a much higher level of care, those specialty areas, and people have been making accommodations for those. So the bottom line is, I know you all are aware of this at the city council level. There's a lot of people that won't need to be hospitalized or won't contact the virus, but when you look at the metrics of the change and how it's going to change in the next month, it's the impact it's going to have on the healthcare system and how do we care for people. Yeah, 99%, or I don't know how big it is, that won't get the virus. But those that do, it's a big change, it's a big impact, and it's already stressing the systems. We already talked about that. Yeah, part of what's driving this over the next month, as you know, is about the holidays, the biggest holidays in the country for social events. So we're going to be trying to get out messages. The hospital association is trying to get out messages, but it kind of needs to be coming from all different sources of people that are trusted and communicate with all walks of life out there. They feel like the governor's message is starting to be ineffective just because it repeats and repeats and repeats. They need to hear it from us. And that was the conversation we had at today's California Hospital Association board meeting. So we do have a chance and hope that the vaccines will start to make a difference sooner rather than later. But again, it's not likely going to be by the end of 2021 that it's going to bend the curve a lot. We'll just have to wait and see. With that, I will ask if anybody has any questions that I might be able to help with. Or
Larry, this is Councilmember Nava. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Thank you. And thanks for the presentation. We appreciate the information. It's very thorough. With respect to the vaccines, you mentioned, obviously they're coming to the first responders, to hospital staff, frontline workers. Is there any idea when they will be delivered to just the general public? Is there any indication of that?
Best guess right now is that it's going to be sometime in the spring, whether it's April, May, June. It'll be somewhere in there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Mr. Lewis, just one more. Donnie Wharton here. Just on, I guess it was around, I appreciate that presentation, but with that, where is, we talked, I think last time, I know funding, there's concern about stress on the health system or the health district. And I know you don't want to go into detail there, but is there any light at the end of the tunnel with this next round of potential stimulus. I figure if you're at the hospital association meeting, there was probably ample discussion about that type of assistance. Just anything you could touch on there for the health of pioneers for us.
I think that everybody's in a similar position except the very wealthy foundations that are in San Diego or bigger cities. There is a loss going on every month from operations. Fortunately, through July, they have funded that loss probably all the way through June and July of next year. And also, fortunately or optimistically, the end of December from July 1 through December 31st is the next measurement period where we report COVID information. That report goes in February 15th, and we're hoping that that will be timely with Congress's decision about what can they fund in the future. We think there's even some money that was already appropriated that's still remaining that we could get. But again, it really hasn't changed much from March, where they tell you it could come, we don't know how much, we don't know what you'd expect, and then it shows up in your bank account, you start figuring out how did they calculate it. And all we can do is hope that they have that same kind of commitment to make sure that we all stay viable and able to serve. So, and that's all we need. So,
thank you.
Thank
you.
Mr. Castro.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Lewis. Thank you so much for that presentation. This is a lot more than the mild flu, right? I mean, originally none of us knew how severe this was going to be. I noticed that the hospital now Central puts out a daily update on the hospital census. I guess what I'm saying, I'd like to see more coming out of Pioneer's Memorial Healthcare District. As far as the census and the numbers of ICU beds that we have available, because I haven't seen that, to be honest with you. I know about the updates because I know what's going on because I know people who work there, and I know what El Centro is doing, but I've heard very little from Brawley, from Pioneers. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that people might not understand the severity of what's happening, and with us being so far away from Sacramento, and like you said, the governor's message is losing effect. People just aren't listening. I think if they get that firsthand from our local leaders like yourself, and a monthly update here at City Council, and people are seeing the severity of what we're facing, I think it'll have a much stronger impact than that in the word coming from the governor. As it is, we don't like to be told from, by someone from Sacramento what we should be doing, but I think that we would certainly listen if we had someone like yourself telling us exactly what's happening here. And the second thing, and I do appreciate your aid in an issue that came up last week. As you know, I don't know if all of you know, but my grandmother passed away from COVID. She just turned 89. She passed away from COVID the day before Thanksgiving. And so far, we still haven't been able to bury her. And the problem was that there was a long delay between the day that she passed and the day that the doctor signed off on the death certificate. I know that's an administrative issue. Can you update us on that and what's being done to mitigate the issue?
Yeah, I did just learn of that single incident that came up, but it turns out there is a larger widespread concern. I did talk with Sheila Kruger at Fry's about it, and I got our medical staff services persons involved, as well as our hospitalist group that is generally going to be responsible for death certificates. We got everybody on board this last week, and I believe that's going to smooth out things quite a bit. Dr. Ebna Shahidi's been really helpful as the, I'll call him the sergeant there for the hospitalist group, and he's dealing with the out-of-state physicians that come here. And while there are really many talented physicians, it's probably the last thing on their mind, and we brought it to the forefront. So now everybody's tuned in, and I expect to see that much better now.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Myself and my family certainly appreciate that assistance and the fact that you're doing this, taking this, addressing this issue. A lot of families will appreciate that. No one should have to wait, 2 months to bury their loved ones. It's tough enough as it is to lose somebody.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And this is one of the intents of this was to make sure we start getting some messages out about this fact. So I'm looking for other venues, and if anybody has any suggestions, I'd like to be able to do that.
Yeah, El Centro, the El Centro Hospital does a daily update on Facebook. They put the numbers out daily. And so we're well aware of what's happening out there.
Okay, I'll look into doing that. There was a lot of misreporting coming out of different locations in the past, and one of the things that we've done is agree between El Centro and us and some of the other major providers and the county and public health, etc. We all got together and said every Thursday at 3 is a public announcement. And we try to leave it at that because, like I said, there was some misinformation going on out there from the one-off announcements that were happening. So.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Lewis?
Nope.
I did have a couple questions, Larry. You made a comment. You said help is coming, but it's about to end. Do you mean that we won't be getting additional help, or do you mean that a lot of the help that we've had coming in recently will have to go somewhere else?
There's both risks out there. Right now, everybody's committed through January 31st, I believe. And the concern is that now everybody is looking for the traveling nurses. And when there's not enough to go around, everybody's going to be shopping for them and taking them. It's going to take to the biggest players. So
yeah,
it'll be more and more difficult. We've had a fortunate relationship with EMSA, and they have been very responsive for us. When we asked on Saturday and we saw 16 patients sitting in the ER waiting, and half of them were ICU, I gave a quick text plea up to the senior guy at EMSA, and he texted me back within 5 minutes when I asked, is there any help available? And by 5:30 that evening, they brought 3 more nurses, 3 more ED techs, and a PA here to help us out as quickly as possible. It's never enough, but it's something, and it's better than not getting responses from the state or the feds or anybody. So my concern is more about there won't be any more increases, and yet there's likely time ending on contracts that are out there right now. So it's a wait and see, and they have reacted in the past. So it's another one like blind faith that the feds are going to fund us. It's blind faith that when we need it the most, there'll be some help, but it's not going to be enough to cover a double of the census.
Right. Yeah. That's a very grim graph that you shared, if that is what's going to happen. Of course, I think there's been a lot of reporting or prognosticating in the past that, we were going to hit these numbers that didn't ever materialize. But, seeing those graphs superimpose on each other, that the numbers are spiking everywhere, that's very concerning. And I agree with Councilman Castro that if there were more messaging along those lines coming from pioneers, either daily or more often than weekly or monthly, people who here in this community are of the mindset that, hey, we should be free to take our own risks. And I'm in agreement with that. But the more information we have, that information is power. And if we see just how bad things are as far as hospital conditions go, I think that would be a motivator to people to be more cautious, stay home more often, or get out less often, I should say, and take those precautions. Because I am seeing certainly this, if you want to call it a wave this time around, the second wave, far more people that I know personally that have contracted it, that have gotten very sick from it. The first wave, I knew almost no one personally. It was either friends of friends or people I didn't know at all. So this is certainly for, I think, all of us here in Brawley hitting a lot closer to home.
True. I
So
agree.
yeah, more knowledge would be powerful, I think.
You bet.
I would say this though too. I mean, I know that it's useful, but quite honestly, people are just not listening to it. The information's been out there for months, and I know the hospital's been putting it out. We've been putting it out on our own social media, and it's all over the news, all over social media. It's all over. Just anecdotally, it's out because people have had it and they report it out on themselves. And it just quite frankly, people just refusing to abide by some restrictions and getting together and getting sick and all those sorts of things too. So I do feel like the hospitals have put information out, and I know that we talked about it previously with Pioneers, and there was some misinformation going out throughout the valley. So I'm glad that that's been agreed to, at least, right? To be uniform. But I think we just need to be responsible and send that message as a city, as a hospital. Just for people to continue to be safe. Because I'll tell you, I've seen it happen very recently where maybe it's fatigue, maybe it's just not fully understanding things, even though it's been broadcast everywhere, but people getting sick. And so, it's just really unfortunate. But I'm just hopeful that vaccine comes in sooner than later,
Yeah.
The April date doesn't say, I mean, that sounds like a lifetime away right now. Yeah.
Yeah, when they say the surge is going to double or triple in the next month,
yeah,
and community is not going to get immunized until the spring,
yeah,
you got to plan for something very difficult to wade through. One of the things that actually hit home with me is the permanent damage that's done. And I don't know that people know enough about that. When you've contracted COVID and worked through it, your systems are weakened for a long time. And it's like the cardiovascular system, it weakens your heart and your arteries. It also weakens your respiratory system. I was talking with people from anesthesia today, and they were just for the first time kind of informing me that one of the things that they've noted is that when they put a patient under that's no longer COVID positive, but was COVID positive at any time, when they first put them under, all of their oxygen sat goes down like a rock, and they have to pump a bunch into them to get them back to normal sedation. So there is some permanent damage, and people still don't know enough about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do know that a lot of people have lasting side effects from it, and I'm sure that's also, it's anecdotal because you're dealing with people that are sick or that are not well to some degree, which is why they're in the hospital. And of course, there may be a broader community that's contracted it, that has recovered and doesn't notice any side effects. But certainly I know personally some people that are still, months later dealing with brain fog or, issues with their respiratory system or what have you. I don't know if you've been able to see the global stats as they compare to what were the surges that we're seeing across our country. Larry, have you seen anything like that to see that whether all over the world they're experiencing this at this time, or is it kind of unique to the United States as it passes around the world?
I don't believe it's unique, but I do believe there are some spots out there that are not as drastic. You know what? I will go back and I will see if I can't send that to you guys, and just so you have that information. But the CDC has the website out there that takes a look at any state, any county, and the entire country. So you can take a quick look at all of those. The one thing that I did hear from the San Diego Hospital Association board was that the most recent attempt out there to find nursing has come from an offer from Australia. Australia has nurses that could be available, and so there are spots out there, but I'm not familiar with all of them yet. We're just starting to learn those.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a big topic. It's scary to hear about, but thank you for the presentation, and sorry that we took up so much of your time for that tonight, but appreciate you giving that update.
Thank you for the opportunity, you guys. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the second subparagraph under 5A. This will be an overall outlook presented by our Fire Chief, Mike York. Hopefully he's around. Maybe we put him to sleep with that, with all the deliberating there.
Not at all. Waiting for my video and audio to start. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Good evening, council members, city staff. Just as our update for our city council meeting, I'll give a rundown through the numbers and then some of the pertinent facts that have originated from our Imperial County Operational Area EOC. Our case count within the Imperial County, like Mr. Lewis has stated, is pretty concerning. We've tested a total of 100,328 people. So testing has really kicked into high gear. Total negative case count was 80,198. Our total positive within the Imperial County is coming up on 20,000. We're at 19,593. As a point of reference, since our last meeting 14 days ago, that's 3,200 new cases in our county. Currently, we have 2,645 active cases in our Imperial County. That's 1,500 more than our last update, almost double what we were looking at in our previous surge. Our hospitals, just buffering what Mr. Lewis said, we have 151 currently hospitalized in the Imperial County. That is almost double as well. 31 are in ICU, and it's listing 1 ICU bed available in our county. We're utilizing 60% of our surge capacity, and we're at 2/3 of our ventilator use. We're using 59 out of the 89 ventilators available. In the 92227 zip code, we've recorded 2,906 active or positive cases since the beginning of the pandemic. In the Imperial County, we've recorded 380 deaths. 48 of those deaths originated from our zip code. As I reported on our last city council meeting, the Imperial County website now has a daily positive case tracker. With that, it shows how many new cases are occurring or are identified each day. On the 10th of December, so 5 days ago, we reached our peak, which was 401 new cases in a single day, which was quite a bit higher than at any point during our tracking efforts. Looking to our neighbors in the east in Yuma County, they've tested 103,486 people. They've confirmed positive 23,203, and they've confirmed 427 deaths. And their news outlets and their meetings are reflecting much of what we're talking about here today. Neighbors to our south in Mexicali, their reporting numbers are slightly different than ours. However, they've recorded 12,703 positive. They've had 1,918 deaths, and as of today, they have 519 active cases. The data provided by the Blueprint for Safer Economy website, which is the two risk level identifiers we're looking at, is case counts per 100,000 and positive test percentage. Imperial County is one of the counties of highest concern. In the last several briefings, Governor Newsom has brought up our county specifically several times. By Imperial County statistics, we are now at 112 persons per 100,000 case rate, which is the highest we've ever been. Our positivity rate in the last 14 days has been 42.25%. The state rates show a bit lower numbers. This is due to two factors predominantly. One factor is delay in reporting and collecting the data. The other is the Imperial County is including our inmate populations, where the state excludes those from our case counts. The state is showing us at 40.6 per 100,000 and a 20.3% positivity rate. Those are both as high or higher than our previous surge numbers. The final metric, which is the health equity metric, was not available at our last update. As of today, it's 18.3%, which closely matches the main positivity rate. As you know, all of our testing sites are incredibly busy. The Brawley testing site at 575 J Street, most recent data is showing that's collected 17,286 samples. They're processing about 750 a week or 152 a day. So they increased their capacity and they're operating very close to that new increase. The alternative care site out at IVC, it currently has a census of 23 persons. They're currently staffed for 25. They're requesting mutual aid resources and additional personnel. They're going to be moving to a bed capacity of 50 within the next few weeks. Again, echoing Mr. Lewis, both hospitals have reported transfers are delayed out of county. You know, in our prior surge, we were transporting, the big concerns that we were transporting out of county a lot of these patients. What's happening now is we don't have anywhere to transport them. So we're not alone in the surge. All of our neighbors are hitting a surge, and that means that there's not room for our COVID patients, and there's very little room for our non-COVID patients. As you know, we're in the middle of our peak donor season, and it's difficult even, it was reported that it's difficult even to find beds for the critically injured trauma cases. Our Emergency Operations Center, all parties have reported that first responder COVID positivity rate is high, just like the regular community. So healthcare providers, fire, EMS, law enforcement, corrections, we're starting to see our staff affected directly a little more than our previous surge. And here in the city, we've seen the Brawley Fire EMS response has increased dramatically. It was very stable for quite a while. The current report is we responded to 197 calls for service that are COVID related and 93 calls that are COVID positive. As a side note, this is the busiest year for the Brawley Fire Department on record. We have surpassed 2,600 calls. Our previous record, I believe, was 2,445. And we still have a few weeks left of the year to be picking up calls. As always, we're working with our local, state, and federal partners. We're participating regularly in the Imperial County EOC briefings, gathering data, providing what we can, and looking forward to securing PPE and maintaining operations. If there's any questions, I will do my best to answer.
Mr. Castro, you have a question?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Yeah, good evening, Chief York, Ramon here. Just one quick question. Does the data show how many of the folks seeking treatment out here or have tested positive are currently residents from Mexicali or another zone? I'm just curious if the fact that our neighbors down south are using our services, are they driving up our numbers?
Okay, so that's been a very often repeated question, and the best answer that I have received is that to be counted in Imperial County case count, you have to be registered as a resident. So, and we all know that there's some discrepancy there, just being honest and outright. However, they are considered a resident to be in our case count. Our hospital census and ICU census does not differentiate. A body is a body, a person is a person. So it's very plausible that our ICU and our hospital bed counts are counting critically ill patients from Mexicali.
Good deal. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may have a comment. I spoke with Jeff Lamore just right before council meeting started, and he had made me aware of there's an additional testing site that's going to be available up here in Brawley starting for tomorrow. They have the county has a mobile bus testing bus that they rotate through El Centro, Calexico, and up here on the north end. Tomorrow, it's going to be at Glory and concentrating on their employees plus the agricultural type employees, but it is open to the public. from 8 to 3:30, and they can process approximately 520 plus through that bus in a day. So the county had asked that we make everybody aware, and it'll be there every Wednesday at the same location, Glorianne, on the east side of their property, every Wednesday for the next 90 days.
Do you have the address for Glorianne? They're on Malin and 9th, is that right?
I don't have that handy, but that sounds pretty close.
Okay. Wow, that's pretty impressive. That they can pass that many people through their mobile facility every day.
I'm assuming that the Imperial County PIO will also make a flyer available, and I believe we can push that from the EOC and share out with the Brawley social media as well.
Tyler, you said that's just tomorrow, or is that more than just tomorrow here in Brawley?
In the Brawley, at this Glorianne location, and we will make sure to get that address. It'll be there starting tomorrow, every Wednesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday.
Okay.
Every Wednesday for the next 90 days.
Okay, good.
On Wednesdays.
All right. Chief York, thank you for your presentation, for that update. Okay, we will move on to item 5B, discussion and potential action to review and accept the audited financial statements for the city of Brawley for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020, prepared by Moss, Levy, and Hartzheim LLP. This will be presented by Finance Director / City Manager Tyler Salcido, and the backup is in pages 54 to 155.
Thank you, Mayor Hamby. Before you today for your review and hopefully acceptance are the audited financial statements for the city of Brawley for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2020. Here with us today to go through those audited financial statements with you is Ben Zing from Moss, Levy, and Hartzheim, and I will turn it over to him now, and I will have any answers or questions there at the end after he's done with his presentation.
All right, thanks, Tyler. Yeah, thank you, Tyler. Everyone can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay, wow, long meeting tonight, man. It's a bruiser. All right, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Ben, like Tyler said, from Moss, Levy, and Hartzheim. I'm here to go over the results of our 1920 financial audit, as well as to go over some financial highlights for the year. It's been mentioned to me that there's some interest in in digging in a little deeper into the financials, so I'd be happy to do that via Zoom. It would be helpful, however, if you have specific questions, to field them to me beforehand so I can have all the pertinent reports available, the detailed reports and whatnot, so that you don't have to wait for me to dig through our files while we're meeting. I'd also like to thank the entire finance staff, especially Tony and Tyler, for just getting everything together in such a timely and appropriate manner. I think their finance background really helped them to understand what information we need and like the format we need it in. If you remember, I was here not too long ago to present the financial audit from the prior fiscal year. So it's really been a tremendous effort to get all the information together for us in such a short period of time. I just want to make sure to give credit where it's due. Let me start by saying that the opinion given was unmodified. So that's the highest opinion that we give financial statements. It's what's commonly referred to as a clean opinion. On the government-wide governmental statement of net position for governmental activities, assets exceeded liabilities by approximately $30.9 million. This is an increase of $1.75 million when compared to the prior fiscal year before prior period adjustments. General revenues have increased across the board while expenditures stayed largely the same. That's what contributed to this positive net change. For business type activities, that includes water, wastewater, the airport, assets exceeded liabilities by $70.9 million. And that's a sizable increase of $3.5 million over the prior fiscal year. before prior period adjustments. And this increase, the amount of this increase is consistent with prior fiscal years. The general fund balance has increased 873,000 in the current fiscal year to approximately 1.8 million. 1.75 of that is unassigned. The general fund reserve percentage is now 11%. So that number is calculated by dividing the total unassigned fund balance by the total annual expenditure for the current year. This ratio has significantly increased since the last fiscal year. So it's doubled, increased about 5%. That's a healthy trend. The city can theoretically operate for about 40 days, so a little bit more than a month on reserves alone. This was because of modest increases in general revenues while being able to keep expenditures fixed compared to the prior fiscal year. In addition, I know that efforts have been made to ensure that the most restrictive revenue sources are always utilized first, and that allowable transfers are always made from other funds to offset costs in the general fund whenever possible. So that's always good to do. Total governmental expenditures has remained largely the same when you don't take capital costs into consideration, and capital costs are typically reimbursed or grant-based. Water fund net position has increased $1.5 million to $24.6 million. The increase in net position was smaller than the prior fiscal year, caused by because expenditures increased, and the increase in expenditures was larger than the increase in revenue. So even though it's a positive change, it's a smaller positive change in the prior fiscal year. Portions of the change in expenditure are attributed to adjustments related to pension. Wastewater fund net position increased 2.4 million to 39.4. This increase is consistent with the prior fiscal year, and same as with the water fund, parts of this are due to the adjustments to the net pension liability. Successor agency continues to have a sizable negative net position of 2.5 million, but like I've mentioned in previous years, it's a separate entity and the city is not responsible for the debt. This amount continues to decrease and as the debt service obligation draws down. GASB 68 and 71 were implemented in prior fiscal years, and the disclosure, of course, continues. The net pension liability of the city as a whole is 7.4 million, 3.4 from miscellaneous plan. It's a cost-sharing multiple employer plan, and 4 million from the safety plan, also a cost-sharing multiple employer plan. This net pension liability number only shows up on the statement of net position and in the enterprise funds. As you remember, a significant contribution was made in prior fiscal years, so this number is much smaller than it was 2 years ago. The city implemented GASB 75 for OPEB liabilities in the prior fiscal year, and the city's OPEB liability is 5.3 million. That's an increase of almost $1 million from the prior fiscal year. So the difference with the pension and the OPEB is the pension, you're continuously making contributions. So there's withholdings from employee payroll every pay period, and the city also makes a contribution every pay period. Whereas with the OPEB, because of the way it's structured, these are just promises. So the city hasn't really set aside any funds to meet these ongoing liabilities. So that number is just going to increase as we go along. The major implementation for the coming fiscal year is going to be GASB 87 for leases, and that changes the way that operating leases are reflected on the financials. This covers transactions where the city is the lessee and the lessor. So the implementation has been pushed back to 2022 because of the COVID pandemic. So relating to COVID, I don't, as of this point in time and on the 1920 financials, I don't believe the full financial effect of COVID related shutdowns and other related costs are fully reflected on the financials yet. And most likely the 2021 financial operating results are not going to be as positive as this year. With that being said, I believe that management is, they're actively trying to anticipate and to mitigate the effects of the pandemic, and they will no doubt keep the council and myself updated as we continue through these difficult times. We as auditors, we don't provide financial projections with regards to future operating results, but we do assess the city for going concern. And that is to say that we try to determine if there's any doubt that the city will be able to meet ongoing financial obligations such as payroll, AP, debt service payments. At this point in time, we see no evidence of any concern in this regard. So our opinion is not modified in relation to this matters. That's all I had for today. Did anyone have any questions?
If I may add a couple comments, Mayor, to try to put a little bit of that into layman terms, as far as the reserves increasing, for a little perspective, the last two budget seasons have been very, very tough. As the council is aware, there were some hard decisions on costs and services provided. We've made some tough choices, and what you're seeing now are the fruit of those hard decisions. We've almost doubled our reserve to 11%, where per policy it's supposed to be 15. If you just go back 2 short years ago to 2018, our reserves were at 671. So while and this wouldn't have happened without the cooperation of all our staff, the bargaining units, council, all helping, pitching in, making tough decisions. So it was a team effort, and I'm glad to see that it's starting to bear fruits. Unfortunately, COVID comes along, and now we have some more challenges that we're going to have to try to anticipate and get over. But I wanted to point that out. And another thing to note is in the original budget for 6/30/20 was some highway relinquishment usage, some funds. We did not use those. It was budget of about $458,000. That was not needed, so we did not take from the highway relinquishment funds, which is good news. And if I could comment on Ben's comments about the staff, he's 100% correct. That Tony and his team, Tony Godinez, Marcela Webster, Betsy Donias, Evelyn Sandoval, Sylvia Luna, Carmen Espino, sorry, Carmen, Jessica Castillo, all of them have been immensely helpful with getting this audit on time. If you would just go back a couple of years, we were 16 months before we were reporting out on an audit. And now it's at 6 months. So, and they're still getting their daily work done. I can't commend the staff enough. They've really come through in some tough times. And that's all I have, except for any questions that you may have.
That's a little bright spot in a difficult meeting, but I certainly have been impressed with the work that's come out of the finance department. And Tyler, under your directorship and management, it's been very impressive to see us come up to date, with the audit information and even ahead of schedule, and especially encouraging to see that not only did we not use the relinquishment funds interest, but that we're that much further ahead with our reserve fund. So that's just very encouraging. Ben, thank you for that presentation. Any other council members have any comments or questions to add to that? Okay.
Just to comment, the same thing that you said, Mr. Mayor. I think Tyler and the staff deserve a real pat on the back. And I also think the fire department deserves a lot of pats on the back too, simply because of what their last report that they gave. So I think the staff is really stepping up, and during the COVID times, it's very difficult. And so I think they should be all commended.
Definitely. And I agree with Ben that, as we move into this next phase of the coronavirus and the economic fallout from it, none of us knows what's in store, but I do trust that our finance department is going to do the best they can to keep us reined in. And I appreciate the community that we have within our agency that, people I believe will band together and do what we need to do to get through a difficult economic time. So thanks again, Ben.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, man.
Okay, moving on to item 5.
You need a motion?
Yes.
Do we need to approve that? Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to approve
I make a motion to approve the audited financial statement for the city of Brawley, fiscal year ending June 30th of 2020.
This is George. I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Wharton, seconded by Nava. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you for that, Tyler. We'll move on to item 5C, discussion and potential action to authorize contract change order number 1 to contract number 2019-07, Allen Street Water Pipeline Replacement and Improvements Project for the additional potholing investigations, cross gutter installation, and storm drain changes in the amount of $79,515.96. This will be presented by our Public Works Director, Guillermo Cias, and your backup is on pages 156 to 160. Mr. Cias.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Council, Guillermo Cias, Public Works Director. This item is related to the recently completed project of street construction on Allen Street between Western El Cerrito and Western Avenue. And during the initial investigation to locate the water facilities to be able to replace it, the contractor had to do some potholing additional or not included in the contract to be able to understand the location of the water line and be able to control the water at the pipe to be replaced. So contractor incurred in these additional activities that were not included. Similarly, on the intersection with Western, that street has a plan to replace an storm drain inlet that during the excavation, the pipe was found with slope on the opposite direction where the water should go. And we had to change the design of that intersection, including a cross gutter, and to install the inlet in a different location. So those were changes to the contract that were not anticipated, and that's the reason for this change order that required those activities. Any questions that you might have?
I don't have any questions. I read the backup material. Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to approve the item.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this change order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Motion carries. And also presented by Guillermo will be item 5D, discussion and potential action to authorize the preparation of the update to the city's urban water management plan by Lee and Rowe in the amount not to exceed $36,625. Backup is in pages 161 to 169.
Right, as described in the material, this plan has to be updated every 5 years. And the last time was done on 2015. So now is the time to do the update because we have a deadline next year. And the reason to select Lee and Rowe is because they did it the last time. So they have most of the information and they were able to give us a much lower price for that. And that study is a mandatory study that we need to do because our population, and it requires to provide relevant information regarding the system, the water supply, the policies of the city, the resources, the projection of the population, and potential pollutants, all the relevant information regarding the water supply and how we deliver the water to our residents. So that's the reason to do this update that we need to do every 5 years. Any question specific that you might have?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the item.
All right.
I'll
Have a
second.
motion. Have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Guillermo.
Thanks.
Next, we have item 5E, discussion and potential action to adopt City of Brawley COVID-19 Prevention Program, or CPP. This is presented by Personnel and Risk Management Administrator Shirley Bonias. Backup is on pages 170 to 189. Hi, Shirley.
Council members, Mayor. Before you is the required COVID prevention program as mandated by AB 685. This is a plan to further ensure our employees' safety and proper protocols. The pandemic plan was put in place back in April. This is a more detailed plan. It also incorporates definitions, what the city will mandate, what the employees are required to do, such as if somebody in their household's COVID positive, they're mandated by this plan to notify their supervisor. And if the city is mandating testing, we have that authority through this plan, but the city does pay for the testing, and those arrangements have been made through PMH, so we can be billed for those. It also gives the employees an avenue to let the supervisors and managers know if they see a potential hazard in reference to COVID in the workplace, and a cooperative way to get that hazard mitigated. So before you is only step one. Once you approve this plan, it will be disseminated to the exec team, and then to the supervisors, and then down to the employee base. There is a record keeping component to this as well, and that will be under my office to take care of. And there's also a reporting mechanism to Imperial County Public Health Department that's mandated when an outbreak, which is 3 cases in 14 days in one location, or a major outbreak, which is 20 cases within 30 days in one location. So it's more of a prevention and trying to keep the workplace as safe as possible. And I'm always open to answer your questions, sir.
Shirley, any idea how much extra this is going to cost the city for the record keeping part of it, and the measures that different departments will have to take?
Unknown at this time. It all depends on how many cases we get and how many testings that we're going to have to keep and how many calls I'm going to take. And I really, it could be, if the numbers, as Mr. Lewis has said, are going to actually happen, of course, it's going to hit our workplace. Just to give you some stats, we had 5 public safety employees out on COVID, 3 out of PD, 2 out of fire. They've all returned, but the 3 out of PD would invoke the outbreak recording and the input into the public health website because they're from one location. We currently have 2 COVID positive employees out right now, have 2 quarantining right now with COVID positives in their household. So they're 2 separate locations. They're not, the 2 COVID positive employees are 2 separate locations. But now I have to watch those 2 to see if other employees within that workforce has developed. We've already notified employees in their areas, and they have tested in one area, and all of those employees were negative.
Okay, and in the case of what you're calling an outbreak with three or more in one location, what happens then? That whole department gets shut down?
We've already had that. See, a lot of this we've already dealt with in June. We had finance who had 3, and we shut down finance, and we disinfected. So that's already part of our pandemic plan. Fire chief and myself are the 2 people that are kind of spearheading that. We will be spearheading this as well, of reporting mechanisms and education and reinforcement. And it's the constant reinforcement of masking, washing your hands, and physical distancing is the safest way. It's also making sure that we're ready for a Cal OSHA visit, and that if we're disinfecting, like we're doing the vehicles, then you keep a log of that disinfection when that occurred. When a new person comes into dispatch, that whole area is supposed to be disinfected before that person leaves for shift, for the new person to come into a clean. This is all part of keeping our employees safe. And that's what we just need to ensure. This plan says the same thing. It just gives us that testing requirement, the reporting requirement. And as far as confidentiality, we never say the employee's name. We had a COVID positive in your work location. We would encourage you to go get tested is the old words. The new words is we require that you go get tested.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else have any questions or comments?
I make the motion if there are none.
Second, this is Donnie. Very thorough. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Shirley.
All right, it's moved by Councilman Couchman, seconded by Councilman Wharton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, that motion carries.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Shirley.
Mayor.
Thank you, Shirley. Up next is item 5F, discussion and potential action to adopt proposed sidewalk and alley ordinance, and this will be presented by City Attorney Bill Smurden. Backup is on pages 190 through 197. Take it away, Bill.
So what we have is a draft ordinance for your consideration. It's not on for a first reading. It's just an ordinance that we put together to see if the council has an appetite for adopting this. There's been a lot of confusion about who's responsible for sidewalks, who's responsible for alleys, who's responsible to trim trees on the parkway. State law has been in place for many decades that the property owner is responsible for the sidewalks and for the landscaping on the parkway and not the city. So this ordinance, if we pass something like that, would make that clear. It would make it clear that if a property owner is going to have to do work on the sidewalk, that they have to have it done by a licensed contractor and done pursuant to city standards. It would provide a mechanism for the city to notify somebody if a sidewalk needs attention or if a tree needs trimming, if an alley needs cleaning. There is also something in there that there's been a lot of discussion about dumping in the alleys, especially behind thrift shops. There'd be one of the suggestions in that ordinance would be a requirement that thrift shops can only accept donations when they're open, and they put a sign up to say you can't leave things. Anyway, it's on for your consideration. If council likes it, if they will bring it back for first and second reading, we can change it around, whatever you like, but that's the idea.
Thank you, Bill. This is George. I know we've been discussing this topic for a few months now, but thank you for bringing it forward. I'd noticed that there is a penalty, right? There's a fine imposed that we could impose. I think it's $1,000. My whole thing is like, people either lie or I don't know what, they're making excuses saying, hey, we thought this was a thrift store and they took donations, but quite honestly, they're just dumping trash. We've seen them do it.
Yeah.
And, it's been an issue, the 500 block of Main Street, 600 block of Main Street for quite some time. Is there anything else that we can really kind of grip in there to make it even more forceful if we actually see people, just dumping in the alleyway? If they are in fact caught?
The way I put it together, it would be the alternative to either issue an administrative citation with a fine or a criminal citation that would be sent to the city attorney for prosecution as a misdemeanor. The hope is that a little publicity about, hey, there's a big fine for this, plus signage will eliminate that excuse. I personally confronted a couple of gentlemen a few months back about dumping in the alley, the same alley near your building, Mr. Nava, and I was told they're leaving a donation for the Salvation Army. Well, the Salvation Army left Brawley before I moved to Brawley 25 years ago, so I don't think they got their donation.
Mr. Mayor, one of the concerns that I had was that we noticed that people tend to put structures and buildings in the right of way that we have for the city along their houses. And over here on the west side, it appears to happen more often than not, that there are no sidewalks in many areas. So they tend to go right out to the curb with landscaping and everything. And then when we have to go in and tear it out, then they say that we're responsible for replacing it or fixing it in some way. And I think this at least would make it clear to them, maybe if we did include that, and I think it's in there, that they're responsible for that section. And if we have to go in and tear that out, we're not responsible for replacing that if they've infringed upon the right of way. They can certainly infringe on the right of way if they wish to, but they're responsible for that infringement at that point in time. And I think we need to be very clear about that with people, including the alleys, because we see, and George has probably been on top of that more than anybody as regard to alleys and the cleanups and everything that go on there. And we've got a pretty good thing going on right now with the trash company and everything else. But we still need some type of enforcement, I think, on that, because otherwise we have no real teeth in that in order to do anything. So those two items are of concern to me. So I'm certainly willing to look at adopting something like this.
Bill, one question I had as it relates to the, like with something that would be in the right of way where a repair has to be made by the homeowner. There is provision, within the code for owner builder when you're making an improvement on your own property and on your own structure. But you mentioned it would have to be performed by a licensed contractor. Is there a provision in there for if a homeowner against the right of way is capable of pulling the permits and doing the work themselves, for them to be able to do that without having to hire a licensed contractor?
My connection's kind of weak right now, but I think I understood the question to be, is there a provision in there that if someone's going to make improvements on the sidewalk that they have to get a permit and inspections, and the answer to that would be yes, if I understood the question.
No, my question was more along the lines of, sometimes you'll have someone pull a permit for home improvement that they're doing as owner builder. Is a homeowner next to a right of way able to do the work themselves, provided they pull the proper permits, or does it have to be by a licensed contractor?
I heard it that time. No, when the typical way an ordinance like this would read, when someone pulls a permit or has to do improvement on a city sidewalk, curb, or gutter, that has to be done by a licensed contractor, cannot be done by an owner builder.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, anybody else got any questions or comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
We have
second that.
Okay, we got a motion by Councilman Nava, second by Councilman Castro. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so that motion carries. Bill, so you will bring us back written language that we will read at another
It'll
meeting.
be this roughly.
Go ahead.
Be roughly the same with some edits, and it'll be on for first reading, and then second reading will be on your consent agenda.
Okay. All right, thank you, Bill. Next up, also, Bill, item 5G, discussion and potential action on potential regulation of food vendors operating in city parks. Backup is on pages 198 to 224.
Tyler asked me to prepare a memo explaining the relationship between state law and local control on what the state calls sidewalk vendors and people operating in city parks. In the beginning, 1st of 2019, January 1st, the state passed a statute, a series of statutes that prohibit cities from prohibiting vendors from operating inside their state parks. A city cannot prohibit a vendor, but you can regulate vendors from operating with respect to the time, place, and manner that they operate in your city parks. So the report prepared for you is just to give the council background on what the state law is, what's in place now. We did pass an amendment to our business license ordinance to deal with we don't want a whole bunch of people coming in for cattle call and expecting to pay the normal business license. And so we passed an amendment to the business license ordinance to keep that $35 a day business license intact during the cattle call season. But I understand there might be some appetite on the council to further regulate this. And this is on your agenda to give direction to Tyler and I as to what you'd like to see. And we'll take it from there and bring it back.
If I may add, Mayor, like the previous item, we want to provide clarity so everybody understands, and we're working from the same set of facts for all potential requests that come in, and we'll have a set. The goal is to have a set of criteria or rules or regulations that everybody would have to abide by, and it'd be clear. If so, by the council.
No, I'm glad that was brought up. This is George. And I know some of the concern was the longevity. I mean, you know, we didn't know this going into it, but there's a longevity of essentially a business setting up in a city park for a long period of time. And then the introduction of seating, which was never supposed to happen. There was the introduction of seating, and then there's lighting and other things. And so it's just making sure that we're clear on that, because there have been obviously complaints from established businesses. That's one, but you know, just quite honestly, we need to make sure there is a limited time. If somebody's going to be operating out of a city park, we can't just grant them an extension for 12 months, you know. And that was, I think that was a really significant item that we moved forward with as staff, without giving it full consideration of all the other consequences, because it became like the hot dog vendor that's down in downtown Brawley now. It's just become a permanent structure. And so that is, I think, one of the major concerns.
Yes.
I guess I would say that, you know, it could become an issue as this becomes more prevalent, you know, as more mobile food vendors or food trucks, you know, do business in Brawley. I guess I would say, you know, if we place a time limit on it, I would want it to be more like, you know, if there are people queuing up, you know, other businesses waiting in line for that location, then it makes sense to have a time limit. But if it's, you know, if there's no one else waiting in line for that spot or that area, you know, I don't know that we have to have a particular time limit, unless what we're trying to do is either get people to move to other locations, you know, so that it provides their service to other parts of town, not just that one location. You know, if that's the intent, then I guess that's understandable. But go ahead, George.
No, that's important to consider. I mean, that's certainly important to consider. The other thing too, like other cities require that there's restroom facilities nearby, and I don't know if that's something that we're doing, but that's something that needs to be clear as well. The other thing though too was you know, it starts with setting the structure up, and then it starts to add tables and it starts to add chairs, which was never not supposed to happen, but it did. And so it's becoming, you know, more and more permanent. The longer they stay there, the more permanent that becomes. So that's, I think, where we need to be cautious, because, you know, that's everybody's park. It's not really intended to run a business out of, right? And so that's, I just think, something that we need to consider as a council. I know in the past, and even before, it was before, long while back, like 10 years ago, 11 years ago, where we had a daily business license fee for essentially transient businesses. So that's not something that and we changed it for a while, but, you know, obviously things have changed now. Now we are there isn't really much that we can do other than limiting the hours and limiting the time in city facilities like that. But one thing we do need to consider, because there is damage to the park, there is use of the park, there is all of those things, there needs to be some consideration for maybe an adjustment to the business license. So that's just something else that we need to consider as well.
Question for Bill, if I may. Bill, is there a provision in that law from the state that we can charge any fee we want for those people utilizing our public facilities? Or is it have to run along with our same as our fee for a regular business license? Because that might be that might be one way to control it in a better fashion, is to have a larger fee for that, or what we may have. I think that's what we're talking about at Cattle Call. So is there some provision in the state that we can do that?
Well, I think it was $50 a day. What
was the maximum?
No, I think that's what it was for, because it was grouped in like door-to-door sales, vendors outside of traditional areas. Gordon, he lit up there, I think.
Yeah. What it was it was $35 a day for mobile vendors that do day-to-day business in various locations. And the way our previous ordinance stated is that they were only allowed to be well, this is more for like food trucks or anything. They can only be at a location for 10 minutes. And I remember there was a time when council changed that because there was a food truck that was going near the high school and they allowed it up to 45 minutes.
Right.
And that's kind of the standard we've been using for people that aren't. Okay, now the whole issue, now we got this new thing about in the parks and everything. And, you know, we've always had the ones on private property that required certain things that they don't take up any required parking areas, that they don't inhibit any ADA access, things like that. Those were always pretty easy, but now with this new law and the opportunity for these mobile vendors to go on public right of way, which, like I said, is usually not really a code enforcement issue from my department side, but we did always help out when Rick was around. And you know, you got those people that have the phones, you know, that they give out the free phones, and they were the first ones who started to give us the trouble with this new law about saying, oh, now we can be here and we can be here as long as we want. But I believe what Bill said, we can restrict them, but the law says to a reasonable time, and that's all it says. And again, reasonable is very subjective. So I don't know, you know, what you guys want to do in terms of saying how long any mobile vendor being it on the street or in the public right of way would want to be there, essentially.
Would one option for, as it relates to this park specifically, to have a fee associated with the use of the park as opposed to the daily business license or the license for a food vendor?
Right. No, see, that's something I don't remember ever seeing in the ordinance in terms of, I don't know if Marjo would know. In the parks, you know, I think there's an application process that they always had for vendors. Because, you know, you don't want to give favoritism to somebody over somebody else to be in the park, being a commercial business. So,
Yeah, that's what I was getting at from Bill. Yeah,
right.
sorry to interrupt, Gordon, but
Let,
specific.
let me explain what the legislature did. They made the rule is vendors are allowed to vend in your parks and you are not allowed to stop them. That's the general rule. And it got passed the same time as the Cottage Kitchen Act and things like that. And it's very, very expansive and very pro vendor. It limits the cities a lot. Passing a daily business license is probably not going to withstand challenge. Doing things like saying if you're going to have seating, you need to have restrooms. That would, because that's health, right? If you're going to sit there and eat, you need to have a restroom that you can use. Not, you can't just draw a line and say, hey, there's a restroom 200 feet away at DS Arts. Well, DS Arts is not going to let your Flash Dog folks come and use that restroom. That's their restroom. So what if there's going to be regulation, it has to be along health and safety concerns, time limits. Could be legitimate if it was, the use was hampering the public's ability to use the park. So what we're on for tonight is to give me some direction whether you want to see an ordinance that has potential regulations, restrictions. I just don't know if that's what you want. If you want it, I'll do it.
Bill, I think you're on that last part you said. I think that's the way I kind of read it too. It said like, if the business doesn't interfere with any public events or anything that the park might be used for, or any other businesses surrounding it, then yeah, you can put restrictions on it, right? It's kind of, but you're right, it's not very detailed, and it also, mentions, like you said, the time limits, but not necessarily giving a specific time or anything like that. So it's really hard to do in terms of the business license fees. Like what we used to do on a day, if it was a daily business, we used to charge a certain amount, but then that kind of got permutated later on by businesses that were more in that area, especially on private property, that they were allowed to be at, and they did not inhibit the business that was there in terms of parking or ADA access. And we usually allowed those with a license that was, I think, lesser than the daily allowance. So it's really weird. I mean, our business license ordinance is old. It's from 1977. And what I understood in terms of the fees, per our previous city attorney, that you can't change those fees without an election because they're considered a tax. I don't know if that's true, Bill, but that's what I was told.
That's absolutely true.
Right. So to change the, but these are, 43-year-old ordinance that we're going on.
Yeah, but I think the fee already exists.
No, the fee already exists
at a lower amount. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, for any business, the fees exist for every business, but they're based on 1977, dollar amounts and cost of living. And I know that the council over the years, many years, even before I was here, I was sure didn't want to raise those taxes because they wanted to probably get more business to come in. But obviously that just doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're going If you're making money, you're making money. You know,
I would propose this so we can move on.
Yes.
I would propose that we look to see what our current business license fees are, just for our review, and then see if there's any way to restrict some of the concerns that have been expressed, which are like restroom facilities and other things. You know, like I said, the permanency I think has become an issue, and you know, those are the things that need to be looked at, unless there's something else from council. But those
I agree with that. Let's move on. Have Bill look at it, give us something to work with, and then we'll move on from there.
Councilman Castro.
Yes, Mayor Hamby. I agree with Councilman Nava about we have to limit. I don't think there should be any seating in that area. It shouldn't be a permanent establishment. I don't know about limiting because that is how Los Cabos got started with the food truck, and now they occupy prime location downtown. My concern is so all the regulations that are being followed as far as the employees go. They have several employees. They don't have restrooms available. What's being done about that? And maybe that's another angle to look at it because they can't sit there for 6 hours without a restroom break.
If I may comment on that specific question, Councilmember Castro, when they took out their request with the parks request, usage request, way back, I'm not even sure when that was, they had permission to use the restroom for their employees only within the 200 feet, which was, I believe, the barber shop to the north. So that's how that issue was there with the employees. And if I could just make one other suggestion, I get it's been a long night, we want to move on, but my question was not related to business license, but for usage of a park, there's wear and tear of any property that you own, there's wear and tear. Are we allowed per the state to allow to charge a usage fee for the park, which would not be a business license, would not be a tax because it's for usage. So that's what I was wondering if Bill could answer that, or maybe we need to come back after researching that.
Yeah.
I'll look into that. That's a different type of a situation and probably can be put together in such a way that it's not a tax and not an election's not required because it's for a specific use.
It's a usage fee. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And that.
So I think we have the direction we need and we'll get working on it.
This is Marjo. I just wanted to let you know that there is a facility use permit that's filled out and that the hot dog businesses use permit ends on December 31st. So I just wanted to give you that information.
Okay.
And he has applied for a new one.
Does he have access to restrooms since the barber shop is closed or should be?
That is a question I would have to follow up on.
If he doesn't, maybe
I
we
can answer for certainly one way or the other.
Yeah, we need to do a little follow up, I think, on that. But regardless of that, maybe we need to allow maybe to stay in business, but we have to be able to have some kind of control. And I don't know what the state thinks, but we've got to have control at the city level. That's ridiculous. But oh well.
Yeah, you mentioned a specific use as far as parks go, and I think as the industry grows in Brawley, you're probably not always going to have people parked on grass, in a park, and the wear and tear that comes along with that. You'll have some food trucks that are parked on a street somewhere, which doesn't cause too much wear and tear unless they're dropping grease like we see happens during cattle call. But that shouldn't be happening if it's a food truck and self-contained. But yeah, I think that bears some research and coming back to the discussion later. Do you feel like, Bill and Tyler, that you have enough direction from us to move forward with some more language in that?
I believe so, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need to take any action on that, or you're good to go?
No.
Okay. Then we will move on to item 6, which is an informational item. 6A, notification of Allied Waste solid waste rate adjustment per franchise agreement with an effective date of January 1st, 2021, presented by Tyler Salcido, Finance Director. Backup is on pages 225 and 226. Tyler?
Just real quick, per their Republic's franchise agreement, they are entitled to a CPI adjustment based on a specific CPI adjustment. And for this year, it is 1.6%. It is on informational item because it's in the franchise agreement and there's really no action needed.
Gotcha. Is there,
When does that, Tyler?
you know what's that, Sam?
When does that take effect?
January 1st.
January 1. Okay. Okay.
And what does that work out to be dollars wise for residential trash fee?
Currently residential is $23.93 and it would be increased to $24.31. And for commercial, which we don't bill, that is, they deal directly with Republic, but that would increase to an average because they're different types of commercial bins, but at the average bin, it would increase to $133.18 from $131.
Okay, so a couple dollars a month for most people. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
okay, thank you. Moving on to item 7, departmental reports. 7A, update on emergency construction project at the Brawley Water Treatment Plant to replace components of 2 sedimentation basins, presented by Guillermo Cias, Public Works Director.
Good evening again, Guillermo Sillas, Public Works Director. Regarding the status of sedimentation basin, the items on the change order, the east sedimentation basin sludge valve has been installed and is in full operation. The raw water pump, the other item, the raw water pump 101 BFD or variable frequency drive was installed on last Wednesday, December 10th, and is currently in operation. The plan is to test the BFD until this coming Friday and to make sure that it's working properly before complete the item. Regarding the punch list items that are pending for the regular contract, the sedimentation punch list item has not been completed and the contractor has not provided a final date to do those. It's fully operational, but those reinforcements that I mentioned previously on the channels to convey the water to the next treatment train is still pending. Any questions that you have?
So it's not likely that our next meeting will be the final time we have to hear about this particular item.
Most likely not.
Probably not.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on to 7B, update on emergency construction project at the Brawley Water Treatment Plant to do the distribution pumps, electrical separation of old electrical system from the new one. Also presented by Guillermo Cias, Public Works Director.
Right, the finished water distribution pumps electrical separation project is moving forward. There were some delays on receiving the material because the company experienced also a shutdown due to COVID-19. The company 5-Star Electric received the materials and started working last Monday. So it is moving forward.
Okay. No questions? All right, thank you, Guillermo.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 8, City Council member reports. And we'll start with Council Member Castro.
Thank you, sir. I won't be too long. I know that we're all tired. You know, welcome to City Council, right? First meeting. But yeah, so as many of you guys know, I participated in the study of COVID-19 vaccine from by AstraZeneca. I received my second shot, which is 30 days after the initial one. There was a 2 out of 3 odds that you would get the virus, which is COVID-2 in your system, was like 2 out of 3, right? And I got pretty sick the first time. I took a second shot, got sick again, but not very, very mild symptoms. But I would say the experience is it's been well worth it, and I hope that we have a third vaccine soon enough to help us get through this pandemic. Another thing that one thing that I wanted to mention was that I saw that building or that abandoned house right next to the DMV that's been the subject of several issues now for the past few months, went up in flames a couple of nights ago. And I had never seen firsthand our firefighters at work. And like I said, I was very proud to see what they were doing. They went out there to control that fire, make sure that none of the buildings around it caught on fire. And just seeing that building was about to collapse and what they were doing and still working. Those are real heroes, and I appreciate their work, and just wanted to point out, and if Chief York is still here, just point out that these guys are doing a great job, and how proud I was to see that happening. So anyways, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Castro. We'll move on to Councilman Nava.
I'll just keep it super short. Just want to thank staff, certainly, and for the work that you're doing. I know it's been a tough year, and we're going to get past it, and I'm looking forward to 2021. Do want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I know we won't connect prior to that, so Merry Christmas to everyone on staff. I do appreciate everything you're doing, and I want to, again, hope everybody in the public is watching. I want to wish them a Merry Christmas, and just I plead with everyone, just, be as safe as you can, take precautions to help stop the spread of COVID. And I want everybody to remain safe and healthy. So Merry Christmas, be safe, and thank you all very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Nava. Councilman Wharton.
Also, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year, I assume, before we all do see each other again. So, and just really echoing the same thing. I certainly hope everyone stays healthy and enjoy this time, but enjoy it obviously in a way that keeps you and our community healthy. So appreciate everybody, including my fellow council members, as we're ending this difficult year, and look forward to 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Wharton. Mayor Pro Tem Sam Couchman.
I'd just like to say I've been traveling around the city a little bit, seeing some things going on. Dr. Vose seems to be testing a lot of people. They're lined up all the way around the building, and also Pioneers and all of that. Those are long lines too, and I understand the other testing facilities doing the same. Just to encourage everybody to stay safe. Wishing everybody a Merry Christmas to all the staff and all of you and all the people that reside here in Brawley and throughout Imperial County, and hoping the best for the holidays and a better new year, hopefully in the future here. And hopefully we can get the vaccine going and everything will maybe return to some resemblance of normal. Wishing everybody, like I say, happy holidays and stay safe. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will try to keep it short. I do have a few things I need to address. One is especially that our library director, who's also our interim Parks and Rec director, Marjo Mello, has announced her retirement here at the end of this month. And so I just want to thank you, Marjo, for all your years of service to the library. I believe I heard you say it's been 33 years that you've been working in the library, and that's just impressive that you've stuck with us that long. And I appreciate all the hard work that you've done in the community, in the library, and most recently in Parks and Rec. That's just been a heavy load to bear, and we appreciate all your hard work, and we congratulate you on your retirement, and look for great things still to come out of you, because you're a member of the Brawley community, and I think it'll be nice for you to be able to come into the library as a patron rather than having to make sure everything's up and running all the time. But I really do appreciate you, and I know that the rest of council does as well, and everyone throughout the city agency knows that you are a sweet person, a very kind and compassionate person, and those are definitely good qualities to have in a library director. So we appreciate all of your hard work and dedication over the years, and I'm sure we will be doing more to recognize you in the coming meetings. It's just a difficult time with COVID, so we look to congratulate you further at another meeting.
This is Marjo. Thank you so much for the kind words. It has been an absolute joy, and I sincerely mean that, for all the years I've been there. And I'm getting emotional, which is good. But 2 weeks from today, I will be retired. So again, I really appreciate your remarks. And again, I've really enjoyed working at the library so long. You guys let me work at the library so long. So thank you.
Thank you, Marjo. I also want to offer congratulations to our newest council member, Ramon Castro, for making it through this meeting. It was kind of a trial by fire. Also, I want to offer condolences, Ramon, for the loss of your grandmother. It's a very difficult time right now throughout the community. There's just been so much loss. We've had, there's a lot that we've gained. There's a lot of, I think, a refocusing of what is really important to each one of us, and family has certainly come to the forefront if it wasn't already, but in this difficult time period. But I just want to offer condolences, Ramon, for that. This was my first full meeting as mayor, and it was definitely kind of a sink or swim moment, so I appreciate your patience, all of my fellow council members. There were a few challenges here. One, we're not in chambers. This is by Zoom.
You're lucky you weren't.
What's that?
You're lucky you weren't.
Yeah, seriously. It probably would have been worse. There are challenges with Zoom, with doing this remotely, but there would have been more spectators, probably vegetables thrown, which I'm okay with as long as they're not canned, because those hurt a lot more. But we had a difficult public hearing, and I appreciate all of your participation, and that it was a robust conversation and a difficult decision to make. We had a very foreboding COVID report, and a lot of questions, I think, that are still unanswered because we were running out of time. But that was difficult to hear as well. And we had a very packed agenda tonight, and we've still got more in closed session. So I'll wrap mine up, but thank you all for your work on the council, and I look for positive changes and important things coming up in this coming year, and I really do appreciate all the hard work that our city staff and employees are putting in for our agency. Sam, did you have something else?
Yeah, just one thing that I forgot. I think we should all make note that Mr. Neil Jack passed away.
Yes.
And a longtime valuable member of our community, a real gentleman. And his passing certainly is something that affects us all. So yeah. I just wanted to mention that.
Definitely. Thank you for that. And our condolences go out to his family, his kids, his in-laws. And it is difficult to see these pillars of the community that have been around for so long and contributed so much passing on. But we appreciate everything he did for Brawley. Okay, we will move on to item 9, City Manager Report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 brief positive announcements. The first one, the Brawley cleanup this last weekend at the Republic landfill was a huge success. We had 145 residents take loads there, and that is not excluding the IVR May site where electronics and tires and everything else went. That's just what went to Republic. It was for 154 total loads. Total tonnage of 74.14 tons. It was a good success. Glad to see that a lot of people were able to take advantage of that, even though it wasn't quite what we normally could do because of COVID with using the airport, but still had some good participation. And lastly, I know all the youngins probably went to sleep because this meeting went quite a long time, but Santa called and asked Brawley Fire and police departments to give him a special tour to spread some holiday cheer throughout the city. So on Monday and Tuesday of next week, the 21st, 22nd, Santa will be cruising through all the neighborhoods and waving hi and throwing out some holiday cheer. And I do believe there's even some Brawley community elves that are going to be assisting from private citizens and We will be posting a route and a flyer. The flyer is going up as we speak on the announcement, and we will have some routes for the public to view tomorrow. Thank you.
All right.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a groundswell of interest in having that happen as El Centro and Imperial put theirs on. So appreciate.
Well, Luke, the thing is, Santa can't be everywhere at once.
That's right. So he had to make sure to schedule some
We got to
time.
schedule his agenda, brother. You know that.
That's right. But he's here. He's in the valley apparently, so he just wanted to kind of hit every city.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for that report, Tyler. And we'll move on to item 10, the city attorney report.
Nothing to report tonight.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And item 11, the city clerk's report.
Nothing to report.
Okay. All right, that being the case, we will adjourn the open part of the meeting and move into closed session. Our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, January 5th, 2021 at 6 p.m. I guess it's yet to be announced if we're going to do that in chambers or by Zoom, but more than likely by Zoom. George, did you have something?
No, just goodbye and thank you. I'll
Okay.
see you all in closed session. Bye-bye.
All right, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.